we should be going live in a couple seconds whenever YouTube catches up. I mean, that's really interesting because I also had to scarf down a sandwich like right before this.
I appear to be done, so
Okay,
last
well,
bite is in my mouth.
that's good. Yeah, no, it was good because it was like back in Boston. It was like, oh well, like starting at 2 p.m. Is really good, so I can like get up, be a person on the weekend, have lunch, digest a bit, and then prep. And then now that I've moved to like Denver, it's like it's at noon, so I just have to like hork down breakfast and lunch
Yeah.
like 30 minutes apart from each other. It's not great.
I mean, I don't know. At this point, to me, I don't even know if there's a distinction between breakfast and lunch. Sometimes a bowl of cereal is lunch. Sometimes a sandwich is breakfast. It's all a mess.
Ah, yeah. What is time? Wow. So, hey everyone, I finally managed to ask someone to be a guest again. So yeah, if you've been hanging out in the chat, you likely know him. This is the one, the only RoSoDude, who has been doing a lot of modding for various immersive sims. I would imagine like other games as well, but you've done stuff with like System Shock 2, Deus Ex, Prey 2017. Anything?
That's really it. Except I also did a little bit for Unreal Evolution.
Oh,
Just
really?
a little bit of stuff. It was like I fixed double-click dodge and I made homing rockets. That's it.
Mm.
So
And Unreal Evolution, that's like a version of the first game, right? It's like a remaster.
yeah, it's like GMDX but for Unreal 1998. So it's like a balance mod. It has new enemy AI and level design expansions and a bunch of crazy stuff. There's a new weapon modding system. Lots of cool stuff, and it's a friend of mine. So I was like, yeah, I'll fix this thing that everyone's complaining about.
That is the best way to start doing this sort of thing.
Well, so yeah, Jared wanted to have someone who knew anything about level design, but he had to settle for me. So
I don't know. Have you seen my lumpy ass block out here? Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
yes, it's beautiful compared to what I'm capable of.
Well, I'm glad you think that. I would say you are more capable than you think. Believe in yourself, etc., etc. Yeah.
Level design is an anime, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, completely. Oh my god, I hate the images that just popped in my head because of that. So yeah, thank you for joining again, and yeah. So what started getting you interested in modding, and I guess like how long have you been getting at it?
So it was the GMDX mod that got me into it. So I started Deus Ex. I guess I'll just really briefly. I played Deus Ex Human Evolution 2012. I played the original Deus Ex 2013, and I kind of started playing multiplayer games and stopped playing single player games for a couple of years. Went back to, at some point I got kind of bored of that, and I went back to single player games. I'm like, oh, I should replay Deus Ex, and I did, and I got obsessed with it, and I kept replaying it. And I found this GMDX mod, and I was like, this is really cool, because at first I was like, oh, Deus Ex is this amazing game, I don't know if anyone could really improve it. And then I saw this mod, and it's like 8 series of videos on this new version. I'm like, wait, this is better. This is actually really cool. Like, all of these are like things that I almost thought about, but I didn't quite put it together. And this is really cool that someone can just take the game and mess with it, and change all this stuff, for the better, for my opinion. And in ways that I thought were surprising, like not just I'm gonna change some, like Skyrim modding. You see a lot of the popular stuff. Oh, I put Thomas the Tank Engine, right?
Right.
This is like I'm gonna change how the ballistics work. I'm gonna change entire things about AI. I'm gonna add new level design features. I'm basically the game designer. Like, what? That's crazy. I didn't know you could do that at all. So, and that's true for Deus Ex and Unreal Engine. They really, other than the native engine stuff, you can change pretty much everything about the game. So it's all open to be decompiled and edited and recompiled. You can add your own models. You can edit the levels. The whole level editor's there. And so I was a big part of the beta testing for one of the versions of GMDX, and the sort of the next, after it was released, I still had some complaints. So I had some things I wanted to do, and I had a list that I had made. And so then I guess this is January 2018, I think. and I started just kind of messing with stuff, and of course I chose like the worst. So I spent like maybe a week just like digging through the code, learning how it all worked, which is something I like doing. I kind of worked for code for my jobs in the past, and this is something I like to do anyways, like dig through the library and figure out how everything fits together. And I started messing with like weapon range, ballistics, and stuff like that. And then over time, I just kind of started doing more and more stuff. I kind of finished everything on my list, and then kept going.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been in beta for 2 years now.
Oh.
I'll never finish. So yeah, no. But I think the coolest thing about modding to me is like I can play a game and have an idea in my head of like this is how something could be changed. This is something that I could like. My big example is the laser mod in Deus Ex gives you 100% accuracy, and I was like, this is stupid. This is you can just like apply it, and then the whole skill is worthless now, right? So I imagined in my head, like, what if it wavered around? Like, what if it like just like what if I somehow simulated what it would be like to actually aim with a laser pointer, and in like a day I coded something that like resembled what I had in my head, and I was like, that's the coolest thing ever in my opinion. Of like, I have this idea in my head, now it's on the screen, and other people can play it. It's no longer just trapped in my head,
Oh yeah, completely. No, I'm not sure I've ever talked about this on the stream. I mean, not like it's a big secret or anything, but in college, when I was doing level design 1, for our level design course, the semester was split up into like 3 chunks, and so the first chunk was like just trying to get you sort of thinking in like terms of like sequences of events and pacing and all that, and we were literally using like building blocks, like child's toy building blocks out on the desks, and we were supposed to like photograph these things and describe the sequence of events and sort of start engaging in that. And that is not a bad way to think of it. But then we started moving to this 2D for the second chunk, this 2D editor called Stencil, if you're familiar with it.
I may have heard of that, yeah.
It's horrible. Anyways, and yeah, we're just doing little bits of 2D stuff here and there, and I was just like, okay, well, I guess this makes sense, but like 2D platformers aren't really my thing. And then for the last chunk, it was like Unreal 4 had like just been announced, and like released to people, and so they were sort of like, well, we were gonna use Hammer, with Half-Life 2, to release to make these levels, but you could also try to make something in Unreal 4. And of course, because it was brand spanking new with no documentation, everyone who went with Unreal 4 had a hell of a time with it.
Yeah.
But I went with Hammer. And I similarly had this thought of like, oh, like I could just think of a space and I can just sort of like translate it into the computer and actually like walk around in it and have fun with it. And that to me was so fulfilling for some reason.
Yeah.
And that's sort of when I knew like I wanted to do this for a living, which was of course the worst decision I've ever made. But but yeah.
You're with me now, and that definitely shows it was a mistake now.
Aw.
Okay, I'll cut out the self-deprecation.
Nah, well, I don't know. I don't know. I engage in it a lot as well, so no worries.
So that was when around Unreal 4? When was that?
Yeah, I was taking that class in 2014, so
okay.
Beginning of
That
2014.
must have been like what? It was out for like a year or two then, I think.
Unreal 4?
Yeah. Or maybe it was older than that, but
Yeah.
I remember a lot of games that came out in like 2012 were still using. I mean, to be fair, that's because they're designed and then released after a couple years. I remember in 2012 there were still games coming out in Unreal 3.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, like Outlast.
Yeah, the one I played was Tribes of Ascend. I was into that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have so little understanding of Tribes of Ascend. Or I remember hearing about the concept of it, which was really cool. And then I think it was a couple years ago, like I tried to like they announced like, oh, all these games are free now. You can just
Yep.
download all the Tribes games and play them for free. I'm like, oh, cool. I should check these out. And then like I could get none of them to work.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is the downloads from Hi-Res's website are like the legacy, like basically it's like just a CD rip, you know. You need like the fan patches that they made to get the servers running and all that kind of stuff. So.
Well, I mean, it like wouldn't launch even. It was like there was some
Oh, yeah.
DX, DirectX thing I was missing or something. I was like, I don't even know what the hell is going on.
And that's so hard to figure out for those little games.
Yeah.
No, try to sign. I mean, you know, you said you couldn't like get it, and I was like, well, listen. I mean, I played for 100 hours and I still sucked at that game. So at some point I got good, but like, man, those are like massive learning curve shooters. So what are we doing today on level stream?
I have zero idea. I don't know. I'm just trying to think because I think it would have been better if I just like went from like this building over here. You'll probably see it in like 20 seconds on the stream. But the building that we've been like focusing on quite a bit towards the beginning of the canal here, and then like actually trying to sort of move our way along this side instead of whatever this grotesque fucking excuse of a lighthouse is. Like, even in the past couple of weeks since I've made that thing, I'm like, this sucks. Why am I... No.
Which part sucks? Can you point to me?
The lighthouse over here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, someone mentioned it on the stream spur of the moment. I'm like, you know, that makes sense for this sort of, like, area of a city, and that does seem really cool. But then all of a sudden it was just like, well, this is starting to feel to me like, and this is sort of a problem I have, I think, with a lot of stuff I've been attempting to do here. But this sort of feels like a amalgamation of individual like buildings, and they don't fit together. Yeah. And so you can sort of see like, oh, it's like this vignette here and that vignette there, and it's like, well, how does all this stuff like congeal? And I'm like, I have zero idea. Like I know this is sort of a more of an abstract problem, I guess. Maybe I should actually pull the trigger on reading architecture books like I said I would.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, because like if you had I think the biggest problem is because you have like this open space and you can see everything all at once.
Yeah.
You could have that issue of like looking at like, okay, this is even, I don't know what I'm looking at here.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking like, you know, a mission like Thieves Guild, which everyone hates, I know, but
yes,
like that mission, you have sewers connected to, you know, different mansions and stuff. And I don't think anyone questions like, well, why are these things all connected? Because it's all like underground.
Yeah.
People question the level design overall, but it's a different question.
You know, that's a good point, actually. I don't know. There's sort of this...
I like Thieves Guild. I'm trying to defend it here, okay?
Yeah. I'm trying to think, because it's like, there's this sort of argument that goes around a lot with, like, oh, well, older games are more abstract, necessarily because of the technological limitations in the rendering, and therefore you can get away with more sort of nonsensical environments, and today that like barrier is higher to clear, and I'm not sure I 100% buy that, but
well, I've heard that argument specifically like System Shock 1 and Thief 1. People say like, oh, look at all these empty rooms, like, oh, what is, you know, this is really pulling me out, and I guess I could see that, but I think overall those games do a good job, more so Thief 1 in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like a real mansion, and it kind of, you know, like I can, you know, this is a kitchen, this is a bathroom. Yes, there's a room that doesn't have anything, but you move through it so quickly that I don't think it presents much of a problem.
Yeah, definitely. As opposed to going like the complete opposite direction with like Dishonored.
Like Mankind Divided is the biggest example of that, where like every surface is covered in trash, like little mechanical doodads and books. I like it, but it's like, man, I keep my room cleaner than this. What the hell?
Yeah. Well, I mean, also with like Dishonored, it's just sort of like, I remember with Dishonored 2 being impressed with the E3 presentation, because they were like, and we've gone and talked about 200 years of history of Karnaka, and in order to do world building for this and like having all this reflected in the world, and I'm like, I mean, I guess that's cool, but
Yeah. So apparently I've been told I'm kind of quiet on this stream, so I don't know if that's
oh really?
I don't know how on earth you deal with that, but
I don't know. Let me crank your user volume.
as long as it doesn't blow out your own ears.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Cool. All right.
Portal Sky augmented. Is that?
That's a friend of mine.
Oh, that's not Shackleton, is it?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Just because he has the same avatar, yeah. I don't think that's not.
Yeah,
that's not the JC Denton avatar. You know, like the one that you saw on YouTube a year ago.
Yeah.
Everyone had. But
everyone had that and was trying to. Well.
Was that a Fortnite streamer or something?
Oh really? I don't know.
My problem. Yeah, it was a Fortnite streamer, and he was like going into the whole Deus Ex predicted me more stuff. You know.
Oh Jesus.
So I was a little sad about it because I don't think it made anyone play Deus Ex. If it did, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, great, people are playing this game. But I think most people are like, who is this old crunchy guy?
Yeah. So basically I'm trying to figure out what the hell I'm gonna do here with like the space between these two major buildings.
Well, this is an interesting question. You talk about architecture books. Are there like books that discuss not just like an individual building, but like how old neighborhoods were like built? That sounds like a really esoteric topic. I'm sure there's something about it, but
oh yeah,
that's a question that's like a game designer question and not so much like a practical architecture question. You know?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm starting to realize that the masterclass website was sort of a scam, but at least briefly in the architecture course that I was taking there for a bit, Frank Gehry, the architect, was saying there's a specific video that's ostensibly talking about like, okay, well, if you build a building, you have to consider like the surroundings of it and like how it fits in with everything. So at least there's some sort of discussion on that. Through that course, it also had a link to this. What's the guy's name? He's French, and it's like a bird, like Le Corbusier or something. He's like a famous architect, and he wrote a book called Towards a New Architecture. So I don't know if any of that's in there.
Sure.
But also, someone on the Dark Mod forums recommended, and I have a copy of. What's it? A pattern language, which is actually talking heavily about that. And it actually goes from like the largest sort of architectural features to the smallest. So yeah, it starts actually talking about like their idea for, oh god, this is gonna be bad with the sex things, but it's like organizing like nations in the world, and they have this weird idea that they just start the whole book with of just like the world should be comprised of a number of nations that all number like 1 million people. And then they start getting smaller from there, but they actually have these very interesting ideas about like, I read one thing. You should know that the format of the book is just like a bunch of like discrete architectural features that they're talking about. So it's like feature number like 634 is kitchen window or something like that. And the larger ones that they started talking about are like, they have this idea of like city country fingers, which is that they want to build really dense downtowns that are only like a mile wide, and they want to put them on like the hilltops in an area, and then in the valleys you have all the farmland in the country.
Okay.
And so therefore like people have very little time, or like they have a very short commute to go out into the country and actually like see things and like sort of breathe. And so it seems like that idea is trying to consider like the construction of neighborhoods. I know that they have a pattern for like a town square or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, there are some things on urban planning and consider that kind of thing. And I wonder how theoretical those are versus how much you'll see like analysis of sort of what guided city construction in medieval era or whatever, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, and there were some pretty good channels that I watched that actually sort of talk about the historical context of like particular types of construction, like you were saying with the medieval stuff specifically. But yeah. I do not delete the VODs. They're in a playlist and they're all set to unlisted so that it keeps the video view clear. I don't know why I bother with that, because Lord knows I haven't made any goddamn videos in a while.
You can see the playlist on your channel, yeah.
Yes.
You can see it in the playlist bar, yep. He did delete them before, but he's now undeleted them for you, so.
I didn't want people to know my shame.
So, Unreal and Dark Engine are both subtractive level editors, and this and I know Quake are like additive. So do you have like an opinion on sort of the difference there, and do you have a preference, I guess?
Is this subtractive? I wouldn't.
Oh no, this is additive, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think
Like,
so. Because this is id Tech. Yeah. Oh yes, subtractive because it's like well, DrawMed is like that, right?
Yeah, DrawMed and Unreal are both like you carve out the space you're going to be in, and then everything else is like, you know, blank space. Apparently, I'm still too quiet.
Wow. Thanks. All right, cranking you up here.
I can turn up my own gain, if that's not horrendous.
Well, we'll see. I just cranked you to 200%. All
right.
An echo. That might be on my end. Woo. Oh, opinions. No.
Yeah, I guess you probably use both, so you probably just as a tool.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of like, well, here's something that's interesting as well. It's like, I think that, in college, that was when I was first messing around with like a bunch of level editors, just because I was like, oh, it's so fun to like learn these things and then sort of see the similarities between all of these types of tools. And then a lot of people were telling me, it's like, well, Jared, why are you doing all these like portfolio projects in, DrawMed and id Tech 4 and all this stuff? Why don't you just build things in Unreal and Unity? And I'm like, well, first off, and I don't know. I first had this like justification of like, and I think rightfully so, like, oh, well, as a level designer, I can't just like open up Unity and then have stuff ready to go for level design. Like, there needs to be some like pre-built gameplay for me to use. And second, I have this. And second, what was this lesser argument, I think, which was like, well, if we're going into industry and you have to use proprietary tools, it's good to show on your resume that you've learned like a bunch of them, because it shows that you're very good at learning any arbitrary tool set, which I think was kind of a bunch of talking out my ass at that time.
Well, I think if you really want to make that argument strong, you'd say, if I can learn DrawMed, I can learn anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that might be better. But yeah. Although
I do hear it's a lot better than it used to be with New Dark, so.
Oh yeah, definitely. But then I don't know. Part of me was just like realizing like, well, wait a minute. Like, there was this guy named Paul in one of my programming classes, and his thing, for whatever reason, was he was obsessed with the 3DO. And he wanted to keep making dev kits and stuff, or use the dev kit for the 3DO and stuff to start investigating, like, why it didn't work on the market, because apparently it was like the most powerful thing at that time. And so he just like making 3DO games.
Yeah. I had to remember, like, look up what that was again.
Yeah, and the thing is that like everyone in those classes never gave him shit for it. And I was like, well, why is it that I'm getting interrogated about making System Shock 2 levels?
Everyone knows what a 3DO is, and no one's ever heard of this thief game you're talking about, okay? So.
Oh yeah, the world famous 3DO.
I had to look up.
Well, no, I think it was mostly just because Paul was just like, look, this is weird, but I like doing it. I just enjoy doing this for whatever reason. And I was like, why didn't I just say that? Like, instead of getting up my own ass about like, well, actually, it's for this higher level reason. And it's like, no, it's not. Like,
we just like it that way, okay?
Yeah, we do. We love it, folks. I don't know where that came from. I'm sorry. So yeah, in terms of modding, do you have any sort of greater goals to use, or like, I don't know. I guess the loaded thing is like, do you want to like turn this into your job, or is this just something that you're interested in doing?
It's definitely just a hobby thing for right now, because I have a career that I don't talk about publicly online, but I have a thing I'm doing professionally, or trying to do professionally, and it's like it's working out pretty well. So I figure, if I can still manage to maintain that while also doing modding work on the side, and as long as I don't get too distracted one way or the other, I'll keep it that way. And the other thing is, really, people have asked me, hey, RoSoDude, why don't you make a game? It's like, do I have any ambitions to make a game? Do I have a game in mind that I want to make? Like, most people I talk to who make these indie games, like, oh, I want to make this. They have this idea in their head. They've had it for 5 years. If you ask me, it's like, hey, what game would you make? I don't know. A single-player Tribes campaign? I don't think that's been done very well, but, like, what does that mean? I don't know. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
This guy, he's got me. RSC's greatest goal is to make sure that no one could ever have fun again. That is absolutely the goal of my mods. 100%. This guy knows, because he streams my mods, and then every time I take as feedback anything that he uses that is powerful, I nerf. So that's my balanced feedback right there.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
With modding, it's just like, I don't know. I have sort of I'd like to think that I know something about balancer systems design. That's my my prayer, is that I know something about that. And I see sometimes opportunities like, oh hey, there's mod tools for this. No one's produced a balance mod that I've kind of like, that I'm happy with. So I just kind of do it, and a couple people download it. So
nice. That is something I'm curious about, because when I, in my last semester of college, took a systems design course, I thought it was going to be a bunch of, here's how to balance stuff on spreadsheets. And I was like, this is like a good, this is boring, but it sounds like a good skill to have. And then systems design turned out to be something completely different, which I actually found very enjoyable. But in the meantime, I still don't really know how to balance shit. So, I guess what is your, like, what's your, what drew you to that in particular, I guess, and B, like, what is sort of the framework that you've like started, if there is a framework, or like what's your like guiding
that's a good question.
Principle?
I'd be really curious to know what the actual, like, what you're actually supposed to do in system design versus what I do. But so I guess it's like a cop-out answer, but I feel like what I do is I just sort of take note of, it's I observe stuff that try to observe the situation. Like, you know, I'm using a lot of this gun, or I'm always picking this skill, or everyone else is always talking about this is the better thing. And I usually try to experiment to make sure I'm not like wrong about that. It's not like a player, because sometimes like a balance thing is actually a player communication thing. Like, you know, everyone thinks, for example, in System Shock 2, that the repair skill is bad. The maintenance is better because, you know, why repair your guns when they're at one condition when you can just keep them in good condition? Well, actually, if you look at it, the repair skill, if you repair weapons you find on the ground, some of the weapons are like condition 5, but they're broken. So if you repair them, you get a condition 6 weapon. So like it's actually pretty well balanced. It's not, I shouldn't say it's really balanced. It's balanced okay. It's better than people think, right? Or people say swimming is bad in Deus Ex. Actually, it's not that bad. The other skills are kind of worse, but it's only a problem with like the number of rebreathers. So I have a hard time explaining exactly how I collect data. I mean, it's just sort of playing and observing and talking to people about that stuff. And what I do though is I keep tons of like spreadsheets and TXT files. I log all sorts of data. So like I have, this is something like in Prey it was really easy to do this because everything is just like XML files. So I'll keep huge TXT files with just numbers. I'll list, like, I wrote a script that lists all the items in Deus Ex. So I wrote a script that goes through all the maps and just dumps out all of the items in crates, inventories, and in the world into the log. And I logged all those and put them all in a spreadsheet and just look at the numbers. So
Wow.
there is some amount of spreadsheet stuff that I do, right? And I've even like written scripts in MATLAB to like draw curves and kind of look what's going on there. So I do very like esoteric data analysis. That's the best way to put it. Like, I'm not like doing any kind of like statistically motivated studies or anything, but it's just like I'll plot numbers and I'll look at things and see what looks out of place. And other than that, though, it's just a lot of shower thoughts and just you know, wondering in my head, what if I could do this? And it's really pretty esoteric stuff. So I do try to like keep data, and I try to make plans, and I like keep detailed notes about what I want to change and what I think is a problem. So sometimes I don't have a solution, but I'll like just take note of problem and try to think of something later. So all I can say is I try to just keep detailed notes, and then the rest of it's pretty intuitive, and I just kind of make it up as I go along. So.
Oh hell yeah! No, that sounds great and way better. I'm recalling now that for my System Shock 2 video for MedSci, I literally went through the level and I tried to look up and catalog every single item by like clicking on the enemy and looking at their inventory, then clicking on this
crate.
crate.
There's ways to do that in Drama, by the way. You can just do list obj type and then type in the archetype name.
Oh my
fucking! And it'll spit it all out. It'll just spit it on the log, and you can just copy paste it.
Yeah, and I thought I was gonna get some like greater understanding of like balance and like how that plays into the distribution of items in the level, and then of course that didn't really. It had no fruition, I suppose. Mm. So.
Well, I thought that was somewhat informative. Like, you pointed out that there's that, like, battery station room, the charging station room where you're supposed to go to charge a battery.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there's, like, the psi boost, the psi hypo here, and there's the med hypo here, and there's sort of, you know, they get you with the body you want to loot, and then some of the doors open. I thought that was actually a pretty good section.
Oh, well, thanks.
So.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
The other thing I really liked about that video, which is the video that got me to your channel, because I was, like, obsessed with System Shock 2. Like, I played it in 2017, and
we've all been there.
I would just go to sleep thinking about it, right? So my favorite part of that video, personally, is you talk about the moment when the player comes back after getting the key code from Grassi, and how the maintenance bot has escaped from its hatch somehow. Don't ask me how it fit through the door, but it escaped from the hatch, and it is now like barreling down the hallway at the player. And that's something that happened in my playthrough, of course, and I didn't really think about it. I was like, oh shit, there's a robot, you know? And that was like a surprising, memorable moment, but you like, you know, you brought out that, hey, this is actually, the players signal that this exists, and they're preparing for it mentally, and I kind of was. And then suddenly you know, the rug is pulled out from them, and they have to deal with this threat. And looking at System Shock 2 again, especially after modding it, there are like a ridiculous number of scripted ambushes like that that are like, like the protocol droids in the cargo bay that are like, there's kind of warning you, hey, there's some protocol droids that are gonna pop out. You don't know which one it's gonna be. Or there's spiders that come after you when you like press a button. There's cyborg assassins that come after you. There's lots of like really clever encounter setups, and you really like that. That's something I didn't think about when I was playing it, but now looking at it again after seeing the video and looking at the level, like looking at the levels in the editor and stuff, that's something that really pops out to me now. And so I thought that was really good.
Oh, well, thanks. I don't know why I have the Cortana button and the Task View button. I don't know. I just kind of Windows decided to make it that way.
Just blame the Windows update.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. In all likelihood. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how to... I don't know. It's weird, because I was just, like, initially thinking having this space sort of be, like, a weird-ass courtyard area, but I feel like that's way too open for a Thief level. I mean, then again, there were, like, the couple of, like, city missions in Thief 2.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that big courtyard with like the canal and bush, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Everything.
You.
Yeah. But then
That one has like it has some elevation, if I remember correctly. Like there's like maybe like a restaurant-ish area, and you can kind of duck behind some walls.
Yeah, so. I should really look at that again. I don't know. Yeah, I should look at that level. That's sort of interesting because it's not like one of the first levels you sort of think of when you think of like Thief. But I don't know. There's something because that was like mission number 4 or something.
Yeah. I think so.
And I don't know, the way that is laid out, I think is actually really kind of genius, and I can't really articulate why.
Yeah, I really like Ambush. It's really tainted in my mind because I hate Courier. I really hate that.
Oh, yeah.
But Ambush is really cool, and that was one of my favorite moments in that game for sure. Is like, kind of plodding around these canals, and I like that you have these, the lower canal path, and you have the kind of some of the rooftops you can go through, and sort of these side access ports.
Yeah.
Alleyways, and a good mix of like there's an open terrace, and then these kind of side alleyways and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I was thinking of like having an open seating area here for whatever reason, but then I was just like, I don't know. I don't feel confident enough to be able to pull that off.
Sure.
So I'm just trying to plop this sort of building here and make the surrounding space for it. Good enough.
So when you're like designing these spaces, are you thinking in terms of like stealth vignettes, like like a Splinter Cell, you walk in and there's like a thing you're supposed to do, or do you think more in terms of like general like pathfinding, and I'll place the AI later?
Yeah, it's like that's sort of the difficulty I've been running into, because I think I wanted to move more over to that stealth vignette sort of mindset, and then that's sort of how the last version of this map started turning out, and I was just like, I don't, or and in contrast, I'm just doing more general stuff. Like I remember reading the Randy Smith GDC slides about like, here's how you make a Thief level. I was like, oh, this is interesting in terms of thinking about like pushes and pulls and that sort of guiding the player path through an area and creating like little islands of stuff. But I kept
you talked about them in the video for the bank, right? I think that was something you
exactly
brought up.
Yeah, and so I don't know, just trying to think about that. I'm not sure I was able to pull it off. But also I think that doesn't necessarily come at the exclusion of thinking of like, okay, well, I need to design like this particular area here, and what are the pushes and pulls of these areas. And I think I was just sort of very broadly saying like, okay, well, here's like this entire half of the city, and theoretically like the player will be able to push and pull through all of these areas, and some guards will figure into there. But also then I had issues, I think, with like putting stuff there and actually making it sort of interesting and compelling, Because it's just sort of like, how many ways can you get like a guard to walk in a circle around a path and make that interesting and novel, you know?
Yeah. I think that something about in these like beef levels that I notice when I'm playing, and something I noticed when you like near the video for the bank, I noticed you took a path I'd never taken, because when I look at a thief level, I see like a path that seems safe, I just go there immediately. I never even consider rounding the other corner, right? Because it's well lit, there's marble flooring there. I will like immediately duck into somewhere safe. So I think that's it's a good point. Like that's sometimes it's like, you know, we'd like to think, oh, we can, you know, make the strategic path and you can kind of balance what you want to do. And oftentimes my response is I will just find the dark corner and go there as quickly as possible.
You will find the dark corners of the earth.
Yes. Still not played that game.
Yeah. I've not gotten terribly far, I think. I tried replaying it recently and then it just kept crashing, which sucks.
Yeah, I've heard it has stability issues on PC.
Sure does. Yeah. Well, that's the interview, folks. No.
Yeah. That's all. Now we have to deal with awkward silence.
Yeah, for the next 2 hours, 15 minutes. This is going to be great. Yeah, I don't know.
My level design experience is pretty lackluster. So I've done a little bit in Deus Ex, and that's it. So I've moved some objects. I've done some texture alignment. I have set some hacking requirements on computers. You know, move some items around. That's level design, technically, right? But
well, I mean, yeah.
But it's I've never carved out a space and tried to make gameplay out of it. That sounds like magic. So.
It's a lot of finagling, I think.
Yes.
Don't
bring that up, Augmented, please. Don't.
Yeah. Well, something that I've been thinking about a lot recently is sort of the historical evolution of what level design is. Which is sort of interesting because it's like, if you read like Masters of Doom, they sort of start with like, oh, Romero and Carmack were both, you know, in different parts of the country, just kind of holed up in their bedrooms, working on like a Commodore and just programming like a dozen DOS games a year, and you're just like, what the fuck, man? How?
That's crazy.
Yeah, but also just, it wasn't really until like they met at Soft Disk that they actually started sort of getting into like specialization, I think.
Sure.
And even then, it wasn't really like level design being distinct from just game design generally. And it seems that it was around the late 90s and into the mid 2000s where level design started becoming its own special thing. And so, because of that, depending on not just time, but also sort of what studio you're working at, or indeed if you are at a studio at all, there seems to be different ideas of what a level designer is. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think at Deus Ex, like Harvey Smith was the lead designer, and he also made a bunch of levels. And you also have levels from Bob White and some other people I can't remember the names of. They're listed in the level editor. So yeah, that's a good point, because like I know like Harvey was responsible for like the skill system, and which is obviously relevant to level design in that game. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely sort of an overlap there, and especially you can imagine. Yeah, I could definitely imagine early '90s, late '80s that it's like we're making a game. The game is the levels and the mechanics. So what do you mean? I'm just making the game, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
So, although it's interesting because like by the time of Doom, like John Romero had like a list of explicit design rules for the levels, right? So at that point they kind of had it codified to, you know, make sure you have opens and open spaces and closed spaces, and make sure you have, you know, these kind of texture seams between each other, like to signal different things. So
Oh,
they
interesting.
kind of they actually had like these formalized. Like, Romero specifically had these like formalized rules that he would always follow, and they made sure the team followed to make like the Doom type level. So I mean, some of those
Oh,
rules would apply to games generally, but some of them, are, of course, just like specifically this is how a classic FPS kind of game works.
yeah, man, that's interesting. Um,
Yeah, versus I mean, and that's the kind of thing is like, not to be too controversial here, but like people remember Doom as like, oh, that was like, well, that was like the first real FPS, right? Oh yeah, that was the, it can't have been that smart, right? Well, Doom, in my opinion, is like really smart. Wolfenstein 3D is like the tech demo game, like that. It's not as the level design is more kind of basic, and there's not as much going on. In Doom, they actually like let's take that technology and make it into a more kind of let's focus. I think they focus more on design in Doom compared to Wolf 3D. So if you can really make that comparison, maybe it's a BS one to make. But
hmm Well, as people have been pointing out a lot recently, uh, like someone was going around on Twitter basically saying, like, yeah, by the way, John Romero wants to remind people that Doom was his 90th game.
yeah,
So,
yeah, no, and I think it really shows because like the reason people remember it, obviously it was like big deal. Oh, there's this shooter, and obviously you have the satanic imagery, and it's really kind of edgy and punky for the time, but people wouldn't have remembered if it wasn't so fun. Like episode one, the shareware episode, was like it was really fun to play, and people maybe don't remember why, but it's really a smart game design for this. Even though it's 1993, it's so old. How could it be a good game? Well, come on,
yeah,
they knew what they were doing at that point. So
no, definitely. Well, I think it's also very interesting because obvious. Well, I don't know if like modding was much of a thing prior to that. I mean, like, I know they started adding more formalized modding support for Doom because people figured out how to do that with Wolfenstein by swapping
yeah,
out like PNGs.
mm-hmm.
Or I don't know if they had PNGs back then, but
Yeah, whatever they were doing, yeah.
yeah, bitmaps.
Well, I think the story goes right that like even as in like Doom, they released a source code and people made their own level editors, which were worse than what it had. But like that
Yeah.
became the standard for Doom level design was like these. There's specifically the tool set that the community developed for grid mapping. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah,
I did not know about
I
that.
think by Quake, I think they released. I think the editors by then were released by id, but I know for Doom specifically that the community made their own editors and they were like pretty much not as powerful and intuitive as the ones it had.
Oh, that's weird because it's like one of my former coworkers at Other Side, Chris Siegel. He was talking about like when he was starting out, he said he was editing levels in Quake uh, by like actually opening up the files and like entering like 3D coordinates
God,
because he said that was
yeah,
prior to them actually officially releasing the level editor or something.
jeez.
Yeah.
Well, so that's I mean, as one of the members of chat here knows, that's virtually what we're doing with prey modding because there's no tools. I think
Oh,
we have a
really?
couple things loaded in CryEngine, but for the most part, we're just like there's a conversion tool to convert the pack files, and then we can edit like text files. So
Oh,
that's
jeez.
it's not the most fun. Well, in my opinion, it's not as much fun as actually having a tool set, but
Oh,
it is an
definitely.
interesting challenge. Some people have been able to do some kind of crazy stuff with it more than I was able to do. So
Why do I have this as a
the
separate
most I was
brush?
able to figure out was just kind of making the stimulus response stuff do slightly different things and
Yeah.
change some numbers around.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you said, but like, what is it that you think that like interests you about like balance in particular?
So that's a good question. So I mean, obviously, I'm really attracted to the three games I've modded. Primarily, have been like immersive sim, FPS, RPG games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in those games, balance is really important. So for example, I don't think I could produce a systems design mod for Thief. Like I have no ideas for that. Like it's pretty much it has the things it needs. It has the tools and the player options.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I would add to Thief is like I would add like I would make a mod for like checkpoint saving so people like me don't have to save scum because I have real problems with like I have to go either save scum all the time or no saves at all, which is actually how I played the games. That's the only thing I could think to add, because there's no like player options and skills and stats and stuff. With a game like Deus Ex or System Shock 2 or Prey, I really like the idea of RPG systems as something that the player can use to express their like either express their kind of desired playstyle, or just something that they can sort of strategize with and try to, you know, how what kind of skills, what's the, like the minimal set of skills I can get to get my goals done, right? Something like that. And I end up playing the games and finding issues with the balance where I'm like, well, this is too easy, you know, like this is, or this skill is obviously better than this one. This skill feels really weak, and I don't want to take this. And I would like there to be more playstyles that come out of these like weaker, weirder skills that people can play around with. So I'm usually bothered predominantly by like dominant strategies and sort of like the overpowered stuff, and also by the kind of lack of strong options and sort of like the weirder options. So like, you know, exotic and System Shock 2 or heavy, the skills are just aren't as interesting to use. Usually people just use standard weapons, right? And or people always say you have to get hacking and maintenance in System Shock 2. I'm like, well, I would like a playthrough where you don't get either skill and you get some of the weird stuff, because that's like the point of these RPG systems should be to encourage diversity in playstyle. And if the balance is weak, if the balance has issues, that's not going to be the case. And in that case, why even have the RPG systems, right? So like getting the navel gazing territory and yeah. So yeah. Shout out to the time I hard abused low tech throwing knives in Deus Ex and then RSD hard nerfed them. Yes, that happened. They're still good, okay? They're still good. They just require more skill now. That's all.
Kida wants to know if you could make a mashup mod of any two immersive sims, what would you do?
So that's an interesting question. So I guess how broad are we talking to? But you know, the canonical immersive sims.
Yeah.
Like you have Ultima Underworld, Thief, System Shock, Deus Ex. Let me think about this.
Like probably Dishonored and Prey.
Yeah, Dishonored, Prey.
Oh, like Arcs, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, Arcs Vitalis. So, I mean, my cop-out answer is just like, well, obviously I would add RPG systems to Thief and make it a game where you can fight or sneak, which is like Warren Spector's whole thing with Deus Ex, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess I'm a little more interested in like, what are some genre hybrids that we could pull immersive sims into. So like Prey Mooncrash was a great example of this with like lights, where, you know, like that was to me the most kind of impressive or most ambitious immersive sim genre hybrid since like Deus Ex, with like, you know, Deus Ex was the big like you can stealth, you can fight, you can sneak, you can talk to people, you know. And for the most part I felt like immersive sims were kind of just doing that again on repeat, which I like. I like all of these games, right? But even Arcs Vitalis, which is like one of my favorite games, is just Ultima Underworld 3. And it's like, the mechanics are all the same. There's some improvements here and there, but it's like the combat, even mechanics are the same and everything. Almost the same number of dice rolls. And so I was really impressed with that. So I would be interested to see if there's like, I guess you have the room magic system. I'm not to denigrate Arcs' originality. There's a lot new in there too, but.
No, definitely. Embarrassingly, I think I only realized that other side that I was like, oh, there are a bunch of immersive sims where there's like a security camera that's hooked up to a turret, but then you can hack the turret and like have it fire at your enemies instead. And it's like, well, we could be talking about System Shock or Deus Ex or Prey. I was like, oh, we keep seeing the same sorts of things. Which is why I was trying to pitch some weirder stuff, like trying to get into like, well, we could start using like stim and response to start simulating just fundamentally different things, and obviously that didn't go anywhere, so
Yeah, well, I think you can look at, there's been other games that have not been in sort of the Looking Glass canon, right? So, I mean, I would pretty much say Arcane has been remixing Looking Glass concepts since
Ye-
Dark Satalis. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ultima Underworld, Dishonored is Thief of Deus Ex, Prey is just System Shock, right? They've been kind of spinning on that, and I like that. It's great.
Mhm.
But more recently, you mentioned Pathologic 2, which I have not played yet.
Yes.
As being, like, an example of immersive sim, and I'm interested to see where that goes. I would say... in like AAA games, we saw Metal Gear Solid 5 and Breath of the Wild.
Oh, yeah.
Not traditionally first-person games or whatever, right? But they still have a lot of the same idea of let's have systems-driven gameplay and simulated systems that drive kind of the main player actions in the game and your main kind of ways of interacting with it, and also a lot of that player agency of like how do I combine these tools to solve my problems. And that's something where it doesn't have to be tied to first person is one thing. It doesn't have to be tied to
Right.
A medieval setting where you can sneak, or
Yes.
like so. And I mean, to be fair, Metal Gear Solid is also a stealth game.
Yeah, or a Victorian setting in which you can sneak, but
So I would be interested to see different ideas where like really all you have to. I don't even think you brought up sim and response, and I think that's definitely like the best architecture for building this stuff.
Mhm.
But I mean, Deus Ex was not built with sim and response. The only sim and response in Deus Ex is the damage type system. Everything else is completely hacked. It's all hard coded,
Mhm.
right?
Well,
Which
I
is
mean,
horrendous.
it's sort of it's sort of interesting because it's like I don't know, like it's trying to achieve that in effect, basically.
Yeah.
So from
Well,
the
it is,
perspective
yeah,
of like
for sure.
an end user, it just like appears to be doing the same thing.
Yes.
And so I think it's just like
and
as long
that's
as you're
fine,
trying to
yeah.
achieve that effect, like that's what we're
And that's what's impressive about Dark is that not only do they have the sim and response for like the sort of designer level stims where that they can set weapons and other things to use stims, but even the generic like the way the game's programmed is essentially with sim and response with the message system. Sims are just messages that the scripts use to talk to each other.
Yes.
So everything in Dark is built in that kind of simulation mindset of this object tells another object this thing is happening to it, and then something should happen, right? That's sim and response, even though it's technically the message script system with handlers. So, and I think Lamhoot's video on Metal Gear Solid 5 talks about this, where like Metal Gear Solid 5 is programmed the Deus Ex way. Where, like sounds are not actually generating like bubbles of of alertness.
I've used that so many times to illustrate
and
this.
I have so many examples of Deus Ex like that of like that's true of sound in Deus Ex. That's everything in the game is like that. So
what's also really fascinating to me is that in that specific way he's I forget the principle, but it was like some sort of software engineering principle where it's like, well, if you have people who are responsible for two different features and they don't talk with each other, then those two different features are going to be very kludged together in the final product.
Yep.
And that paired with like, again, this historical emergence of level design, for instance, I think it's very interesting to be like, well, the way that we like decide to work with each other is going to have an effect on the final product.
Yeah, for sure. Well, but yeah, I think that does point to though, like that the Dark Engine. I think it's like Tom Leonard and some of the people who programmed that were really ahead of their time in this. Because Thief wasn't supposed to be a stealth game. It was supposed to be originally it was going to be Dark Camelot, and it's going to be this kind of traditional medieval RPG thing with the Looking Glass immersive sim thing on it, right? But they made an engine for that. And it turns out that the part that was working the best was stealth, so they kind of honed in on that. But at the same time, you have Irrational working in System Shock 2 with the same executable for the engine, and it's kind of broad enough that it can service both of those goals, obviously with some growing pains. But you can look at System Shock 2 and think like, okay, the sound propagation is being used for something else. It's not used for stealth. It's used for scaring the player and cluing them on enemy locations. And you have the stim response is used for damage types and is used for the way AI sends signals to each other, and obviously System Shock 2 has this layer of RPG systems, but that's what the engine was built to support that stuff. It was built to support simulated systems, so it works for different types of games. And I guess I don't know how modern engines are programmed at all because I only work in 20-year-old games. Uh, well, aside from Prey, but again, I don't know how Prey works either because I only saw the XML file. I know that Prey has a signal system which is sim and response, and I think a lot of modern engines do kind of use that script message handler idea as opposed to like let's hard code every interaction between every class. So I think things have moved that way from what I've seen or what I understand. I could be totally wrong on that because it depends on the game and depends on the engine.
Mm-hmm. But. Yeah. Well, Lord knows I still need to finish that fucking video on what a game engine is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That would. Yeah. I mean, listen, I barely know.
Yeah.
The engine is the thing that stops me from doing things I really want to
do. Spoken like a true game dev.
I've made it. Yeah.
What the fuck is this building gonna be? I don't even know. Like an ale house.
When do you think level design benefits from being clear and telegraphed, for example, via signage, maps, color plot, versus intentionally obtuse and slightly confusing? For example, Constancy's mansion in the Sword. I mean, my answer is I love being confused. So, the Sword is great. I love all the spooky missions in Thief. I love Down in the Bone Horde. So my answer is
hell yeah.
More confusing mazes. I mean, listen, I like the abstract stuff in Doom and Quake. So I have no problem with that. But you can provide a more intelligible answer that's based on principles rather than just like I like this.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it just has to go back to the intent of the experience, like what you want the player to feel. To be able to very quickly parse an environment with those forms of telegraphing, that makes the player a more competent actor in this digital world. Whereas when you are walking around something that is architecturally and sometimes geometrically impossible, that puts them on their toes, and it's harder for them to get sort of a sense of where they're going. And so if that's appropriate for like the story beat, I would say that, not that I necessarily think that this needs to be like story centric, but yeah, if it's appropriate for the story beat, I would say like, yeah, go for it. And of course you have to understand like how appropriate it is and how far, like you can take things too far is what I'm saying. Like the real fun thing about the Sword is that you think that it is going to be a normal mission, and then slowly as you start going into the mansion, it starts slowly changing. Like I think the first thing I noticed out of place when I was playing that mission was that you can like look up in the hallway and there's like a gap in the hallway like right in front of like a door, and you're like, well, there should be like a way for you to, like there should be like a landing for you to walk out on in front of this door, but no, it just drops straight to the first floor. And that's a very subtle thing. And then of course you get the door that's sideways, that's in the ceiling, and then the rooms full of beehives. Yeah. But that also kind of reminds me of like for a little bit there were all of these games that were sort of obsessed with impossible geometry that were just frankly really bad. Like, I'm trying to remember. There's that one that was like called Hector or something like that, where like it kept changing the geometry behind your back or something like that, or you kept walking through and then you saw that it was like looping. And so the thing is that with like something like the Stanley Parable, where it's very obviously having attention called to it for humorous purposes, but also, it's still very like linear. Like there's like this looping hallway in the Stanley Parable you walk around. But it's either like, well, you go clockwise or counterclockwise. That is something that the player can still keep track of. Whereas stuff in Hector, it was like they had these very large sort of looping environments that you had to sort of navigate through and like do puzzles within. And it's like, well, the player can't really keep all of that information in their head together if it gets too complex. And Hector seemed to be really hitting that mark.
Have you ever played Antechamber?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's also a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one. I like that one because I think it was it's landmarked pretty well. Like the areas you go to, like the little puzzle rooms or whatever, they have they have like a unique look to them, so you can kind of remember which areas. And like looking at them different angles, they're pretty clear from each other. And I'd say most of the game's challenge is trying to remember, like, keep the logic gates of which areas connect to which other areas in your head. So there's like not much else you're having to manage on top of it. And there's no resources. There's even the puzzles that within the rooms are really basic, just block puzzles, right? So I liked that one because it's very much just focused on like, let's make Escher level design. It doesn't make any sense. But I think it would be frustrating if it were like, if you put that, like, let's set an immersive sim in that environment, I would be angry, you know? Like, you know, like suddenly, okay, body of the many is non-Euclidean. Okay.
Oh, God.
So, I mean, other thing about the signage point too is like, I think when your goal is simple, like your goal in Bone Horde is get to the end of the maze, right? It can be fun to have a maze. Or in the sword, it's get to the sword, and it's obviously like somewhere on the top floor, and your goal is to just figure out the layout and do that. When I think your objective is go to the kitchen and unlock the safe, or go to the System Shock 2, go to the override control and punch in these numbers, right? In that case, having level design that doesn't make any sense and that you don't know where anything is, and like there's no signs and there's no evidence that this is a kitchen or this is the control chamber, is really frustrating, because then you're like, I'm just walking around frobbing every wall panel hoping this is the one, right? So
I've been slowly trying to introduce frobbing into my workplace environment.
Yeah, my friends will never hear me use the word interact. I always say frobbing, and now they've started. I've gotten my friends to say, like, to talk about frobbing in Dark Souls, which is like the farthest game that has never heard of the word frobbing.
Beautiful.
So.
That's kind of brilliant. No, that's a really good point, I think, about player expectations, where it's just like, you know, you are getting into a kooky environment, and it's like, oh, well, okay, you know, at least mentally you're prepared for it.
Yeah. One more thing about frobbing. I have a clip from your System Shock 2 video where you a sensual voice, and I have that clip and I send it to people too. So.
Oh, beautiful. That might be where Key Dog got it.
Yep.
For my hybrid immersive sim, I would like to make a hybrid between Underworld Descendant and a good game.
Oh, he's getting there. He said it, folks. Holy shit. Oh, God.
Heyo.
It's self-deprecating. I can't say anything, but he can.
You can insult that game all you want. I don't give a shit.
I will say on the Underworld topic in general, and my soapbox of save systems, I really wish, like in Underworld they have that silver sapling thing, right?
Yeah.
And that is like the reason I quit the game, and halfway through, not because it's like this is too confusing or obtuse, like that made the combat completely pointless, which made my resource management entirely pointless, which made like my draw to keep playing, and I was just like, oh, I'm gonna do something else now. So I remember people complaining similarly about like Underworld, like sort of respawn system or whatever.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I was looking at this like, I don't know, dude. I mean, I think the silver sapling was a good idea at the time, and it was like later used better with the reconstruction chambers and System Shock. But yeah, I don't know, dude. This is pretty flawed too.
No, completely. I don't know. I was trying to pitch in the sort of post launch updates and all the improvements that we're thinking of. The silver sapling in UA was just such a big issue because it just sort of made everything like not terribly consequential, I suppose. Yeah. And so I kept trying to pitch this thing of like, well, we already have like a prefab for silver sapling seeds, because there was this system idea that was kind of half implemented and then cut along some way, I think prior to when I got there, of this sort of ecology system of planting different seeds and having a bunch of like plants of various types sort of sprout because of that, and that they were dependent on the light that was generated by the mana wisps.
Okay.
And then the mana wisps were eating mana, but then plants would give off mana. And so it was this sort of ecological cycle there, which was cool. So we already had like a model and a prefab set up for like a silver sapling seed, basically.
Yep.
And so I was thinking of like, oh, okay, well, what if we just turn this into a resource? Like, the player has, X number of silver sapling seeds. If you plant a seed, it turns into a silver sapling. If you get resurrected at the silver sapling, it withers and dies, and you lose that one. But then, it sort of also created this interesting thing, because it's like, well, if you frob the silver sapling, it'll turn back into a seed, and you can, like, take that back with you. So it's sort of interesting of, like, well, if you're like a player and you plant a silver sapling halfway into a mission, and then you actually manage to get through it and back without hurting yourself, and then you're sort of like back at the grand staircase or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh shit, I forgot my silver sapling. And those seeds are really valuable. So it's just like you have this sort of all these like really interesting ideas and tensions that come from that,
No, I totally agree. And in fact, I was actually thinking of the same thing for Prey. So one of the things that bothers me in Prey is, like, a lot of the game is looting, right? It's just, like, looting containers and picking up trash. Mm-hmm. And it's really bothersome when you die to go and do that again. Like, it's fun the first time to explore, but the second time you're like, I already picked up all this trash, please. And so in System Shock 2, they have the respawn chambers, right? And System Shock 1 as well, although I have more problems with how they're implemented there. Mm-hmm. So
wow, you're telling me they were worse? You're telling me they were worse?
Well, so I mean, my problem with them is like there's no resource cost, and it's kind of like at some point you just start to abuse them. So, I mean, there's issues we can talk about there. But the point is that I like that in System Shock 2 you have this thing of like, I'm looting this area, but once I've looted it, if I've died, I can keep playing. But there's a cost of like, it costs nanites, and I'm gonna be low health when I respawn. And enemies will be respawning as well. So like there's threats that populate the map, and in Prey I think that would be really cool if like you had respawn chambers and you could justify them as this is some kind of mimic linking quantum tether or whatever nonsense technology, consciousness simulation, something. There's some way to justify it, right?
Yeah.
And you could respawn the player and it would like cost a resource, right? So it'd be like you're saying with the sapling or like the Resident Evil ink ribbons. So let's say you could craft a mind tether with exotic material. So you could trade how much do I want to make neuromods versus how much do I want to have respawn points,
Oh, interesting.
That was my idea for that, but not doable in the least.
Oh, no? Right, because of the limited access to the tool, yeah.
Yes. So that was like, I think that would have been ideal, and I think that would have really worked better, like in terms of this being a Shock successor, better than Bioshock's Electro Chambers, which I have massive problems with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what's also funny to me about this is like, this is something we see now in like the Dark Souls games. They literally have contiguous player respawning, just like System Shock. Mm-hmm. The only difference is enemies respawn when you respawn and stuff. But like, it's not a save. It looks like a save room, like a Metroid or something. It's really like a Shock respawn chamber. And everyone thinks Dark Souls invented this. It's like, no, this was a System Shock. This is an Ultra World. What the hell? So, I mean, I think there's some lessons that could be learned there. So I totally agree with you that like maintaining tension and sort of consequences for your actions is vitally important when designing like a player respawn system.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you just like a wall, just a lemming rush every enemy with my wrench until they die, and then that was the game. But, you know, what reason do you have to employ creative strategies at that point? You know?
No, completely. I completely
so, yeah,
agree.
I'd definitely be interested to see more games tackle ideas for how to make that interesting as like a choice, you know, with some dynamics to it rather than just kind of like a get out of jail free button. And then people will say, well, you can just not use it. You can just save scum instead. Like, oh.
I forget the player width. Yeah, the player width is about 32. All right. Woo. Metrics.
Rosa liked me this stream, and I was like, oh shit, that's the frobbing guy. It worked.
Brilliant.
Oh.
I'm kind of amazed that such a stupid joke like that managed to hang on. Like,
yeah. Well, I think you just you repeated it enough times that it got stuck in our head.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because it's like there are parts of that where it's just like I think that there are like YouTubers that I watch that do that sort of thing that clearly it's not working and it's just like the act of repetition that they're expecting to get a laugh.
Yeah.
And yet
Well, I think
here I am committing that sin.
Yeah. Although, yeah, to be fair though, like frauding is a weird word. No one knows what it is when they first hear it, and the way you say it makes it sound like it's some kind of erotic thing. So
yeah,
I think that I think it went off pretty well in that video.
Well, here's hoping.
What do you think about Deathloop's time loop mechanic in terms of respawning? Well, I'm interested in that because it kind of seems like we don't know much about the game. I've read some blurbs, I guess.
Right.
But it looks like it's Dishonored mechanics, but with like the moon crash structure.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of neat. I'm interested in that. I mean, it certainly seems like you lose all of your objective progress when you die. It seems like because the whole goal I think is to chain. To like construct the perfect run where you chain all your objectives together in like the Groundhog's Day kind of fashion. So
yeah.
That is something I'm interested in, and it's I wouldn't be surprised if they have like a layer of meta progression for like your gear or whatever powers between runs, which is honestly my biggest complaint about Moon Crash. That stuff is too easy, but yeah. So I'm definitely interested in that. I'm curious to see sort of what they do with it. I know the other big component of that game is the asymmetric multiplayer thing, which is like I'm really wondering how that's going to be balanced because like unless they like are they going to nerf if it's like a player character doing it, are they going to nerf them versus having like a really overpowered AI character? Because like an AI character is not going to be as threatening as a player character, and when you're talking about a context where someone is trying to finish this game, they're trying to, construct that perfect run, and then a player invades their lobby, and now they have to fight this guy. Like, I'm very interested. That sounds like fun, but I wonder how they'll do it.
Oh yes.
Again, that's
No, same.
Because that's another Dark Souls idea, where except in that case, it's like. If you die, you'll just get reset back to the previous checkpoint. It's not the hugest deal. You get invaded, and even then, people are really upset about getting invaded. They hate it. The people turn off multiplayer to not get invaded. So, in a game that's like, there's like big stakes to dying, I really wonder what that's going to look like. And I also wonder if it's just going to be fun to grief people. So.
Multiplayer and immersive sims is a bit of an untapped idea. Yeah. Not completely.
I think it's good that they're targeting like a antagonistic framework for that, because I think in a lot of co-op immersive sims like System Shock 2, there's co-op and people have hacked Deus Ex co-op. It kind of degenerates into like silliness, like people. It becomes like a let's joke around and I'm gonna throw some nanites at you, and also just people look really goofy in third person in the old games.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
There's that. Um,
so yeah.
oh, on that subject, I think interestingly, have you played the Blackout Club at all? Actually.
I have not.
Okay, well, it's that. And that sort of, I remember playing that with actually some former coworkers while I was still at Other Side, and just on the weekend, and we were sort of talking about it and taking notes, and we actually had this experience of like, it was me and one of the designers, Carl, and we were just hanging out and playing a two-player game, and then we didn't realize this, but some rando jumped in because we didn't realize that it was like an open session, and we were like, oh, okay, well, we'll just sort of deal with this person. But then this person clearly played a lot of this game, and they just kept kind of plowing forward and doing things, and I was like, wow, this makes this really boring. And they were sort of this like font of knowledge about this still in early access game. And they were just like, yeah, so there's this and there's that, and you got to do the thing, and there's this bit of lore. And then they just kept like going ahead and doing stuff. Meanwhile, like Carl and I were just trying to avoid these like sleepwalking adults in the neighborhood. And to me, that felt really shitty because it was like, well, clearly these objectives here are structured in such a way that one person can just plow ahead and do it on their own if they want to.
Yeah.
And because of that, the co-op is just completely superfluous. There's no reason for that.
I had some of this issue. I was playing I Divine Cybermancy, and it's like, you have the experience of one person's played it before, no one else has, and that game has such like a dense layer of just like menus and stuff going on. And so one guy's just sprinting to the end, completing all the objectives. I'm just trying to hack ATMs. Like, come on, run around and do stuff. So. Yeah, that's something where I'm like, it's definitely a tough question of how do you make it so that the multiplayer. I was talking to my friend about this is like totally the same topic of like, how do you make it so the multiplayer incentives align with like what you'd want from like a single player game with challenges and strategy and stuff, versus like either A, screwing around, which could be fun, but like like Portal 2 is good for you screw around and then you finally, after killing each other 30 times, you finally solve the puzzle, right? That's the fun of that, right? Versus like a more serious game, like what you're talking about, where you're trying to solve these problems and figure out where to go next, and kind of manage these obstacles. And how do you make that work in a context where, someone can kind of pick up a lot of agency to do it themselves? So. Which I think is the way I describe it, because like I've been playing, I played some co-op games with some friends, and like I think the biggest sort of the best thing to do that I've seen with them is like when different players have to fill different roles, and like different resources you have to figure out, and you can't just have one person going back and forth doing everything. It has to be everyone kind of contributing. And so even if someone's better at the game, they know what to do, the best they can hope to do is direct everybody, not solve all the problems themselves.
No, same. Actually, that's a very good point with like Portal 2, because it's like I think I have both experienced and then have perpetuated that sort of shittiness where it's like, oh well, I already know how all of this works, so therefore I'm just like dragging my partner through the whole experience. So obviously, it's not unique to like immersive sims. I just think it's like a general co-op problem.
I will say there's one co-op game. Your buddy Matt MML.
Yeah.
Right. He's a big fan of Mario 3D World, I think.
Yes.
And my roommate had me play that game with him, and that game is genius in its co-op design, because it's not actually a co-op game. It is a player versus player battle royale, like hardcore screw each other over game in truth. Because even though it seems like, oh, we're all trying to get this level together, you're trying to like throw each other out the stage so you can get the stars and I can pick up all the coins. And it's actually like this brutal competition, which is really cool.
Oh,
Because
that's interesting.
yeah, it's not what you'd expect. Because I played one of those like Wii Mario games with my cousin. So I was like, this is nothing. And basically what ends up happening is one person goes into bubble form, which means they're invulnerable, and the other person does the whole level. Because it's just not fun to jump through these 2D Mario stages together. But in 3D world, they have incentives to try to be the best in a map. So you want to try to grab all the stars, grab all the coins. You're trying to like race each other for stuff, and they build little like uh, mini games or puzzles where you can actually screw each other over. So like maybe there's a bunch of panels you have to press in sequence, which is like nothing for a single player. But for multiplayer, you can flip the switches back, so you can try to be the last guy to be on a panel that'll activate the star or something like that. And then you have to race to the star, and you constantly throwing each other off the ledges. And then, but the problem is, it's like what's cool about that is it's not just let's kill each other as many times as possible, because if you all run out of lives, the game's over. You have to start the map over, right? So
Right.
you have to like balance how much do I screw you guys over versus we don't complete the mission at all. So
That
like,
is.
I had never played anything like that, and it was actually like the most uproarious multiplayer session I've ever had with people when I played four player quote unquote co-op in that game. So
Oh, you're right.
that's something I'd like to see more of.
That is kind of brilliant.
I'm gonna get a glass of water. I'll be right back.
Hey, you do that. Oh, by the way, hi, Alex. I know your message has been sitting there for a while. How you doing? Oh, what did I hit? Yeah. I hit the edge button, which is not what I wanted.
And we're back.
Woo! So this is sort of an interesting area that kind of emerged, I suppose. Not that this really goes anywhere, although I think I'll use this as sort of the sort of shortcut recovery path to have the player like jump back to the player start here.
Sure.
But if you sort of look at this, like I was just sort of looking at the side of this building, and I was like, this is flat and boring. What the hell can I do? I was like, well, maybe I could sort of add these little bumps here. I don't know what the proper term is, but sort of like little offset, like places where we can like stick some windows in there. And then it sort of interestingly turned into like, oh, well, this could be like a little hiding spot in between these two areas. So now I started like moving the lights around in consideration in order to like help that. And so actually we have this tiny little avenue over here, which actually feels pretty good. It's got that alternation of like light and shadow, and has that little island in the center for the player to hide in. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't suck.
Yeah, I like. I think you talk about this in your YouTube video as well, like the lighting corners versus like these middle spaces. It's because like that that highlights the kind of the path, but it still leaves these spaces in between you can kind of hide in, and also it leaves mystery about what's going to happen around the corner. But at least you know what you're going to deal with when you walk in there. So.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to remember. This is probably way too modern, but I don't know if there's like a dumpster model here.
I will say, if there's anything that Invisible War does better than the original Deus Ex, which is like very few things, the dumpsters are massively improved. You can open them, you can throw bodies in them.
Oh, nice.
They have nice dumpsters.
I forgot about that aspect of it. There's so much of Invisible War that I just do not remember.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I've never finished the game. I've tried it 2 or 3 times where I'll get through Seattle or something, but the tiny little levels that you do these constant loading screens, and they, especially on Windows 10, it feels like they crash the desktop. Like,
Oh, really?
my entire game will close out and then it'll open up again. It's just I can't deal with this.
Mm. Some way of searching through this stuff would be good.
That's one nice thing about like I don't know about it if it's original, but Nudark Dromed, you can like export text files and everything, so you can just like Control F. It's pretty nice.
That might be a good idea. Oh, we do cart, like a broken cart maybe, to provide a ledge up. I don't know.
Made all these things. It's like is it a team of people who made the Dark mod, or?
Yep. Hey, Zach Frazier.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, no, that's sort of the really impressive thing. It's like, I don't know how long it's been going. I think it has been going on, I think, since Doom 3 actually came out. Because I know that they were working on the Dark mod prior to, like, the IdTech 4 source code release, which was, I think, 2011. So they've been working on this for, like, over a decade at this point, I believe.
I think, because I remember I heard about the Dark mod, back when it was still actually a mod and not a standalone.
Exactly.
And I think I heard about that around the time Thief 4 came out, because people were saying, "Oh, this is the real Thief 4."
Mm-hmm.
You know, so.
Thief 4 was 2014?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's as long as I've known about it. And that was before I even played Thief.
Aircutman, Waterworks weapons. Nah.
Keto asks,
shit.
what are your opinions on Thief 3 and 4? Do you think they took the right kinds of inspiration for 1 and 2?
I've not played much of 4. I've tried a couple times and bounced off it. I think the farthest I've ever gotten was like getting past the first main mission. And then I think just kind of there was like some other person I talked with, like some old lady oracle prophet person. I think that's as far as I got. But yeah, I don't know. I would like to do a bit more of a deeper dive into that game to actually, because I think it's still obviously worth it to look like, okay, what exactly did they change here, and why does the experience suffer because of this? Thief Deadly Shadows is, I think, genuinely great. It's obviously not like to the level of Thief 1 and 2, but I still think it is a very enjoyable version of what they had already set up. Obviously there were technical limitations with the small levels, but if you have that like Thief Gold mod or Thief 3 Gold mod,
I think it's a Thief Sneaky upgrade, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have that enabled, then it like just stitches together all these maps instead of having like mid-mission loading screens, which, my god.
The same person or people made visible upgrade for Deus Ex Invisible War, and it doesn't have that feature. I hope it will eventually, because that would really improve the experience. I mean, I know obviously it doesn't change level design, but just like not having loading screens every 2 seconds.
No, completely.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a genuine effect.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, maybe even that could mean that like enemies can patrol between zones too. That's something. So.
Oh yeah.
And you could carry objects between zones, that kind of thing. You know. So.
Yeah, but no.
That's something, even if it's not a huge improvement.
Definitely. I would say as a general rule of thumb, my experience with Deadly Shadows was like, whenever they changed something core about the Thief gameplay that already existed, I didn't like that change. But when they added something on top of it, I did.
That's cool.
So I think there's like a very subtle difference in like Deadly Shadows, where it's like, if you crouch and then you move, you don't make noise at all, as opposed to making like a subdued amount of noise.
Yeah. that's the Deus Ex thing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
actually, someone was asking me like, "Hey, RoSoDude, can you like make Deus Ex footsteps more like, Thief, and so you can have a stealth skill? I mean, we do have a stealth skill now in GMDX, but
Oh, nice.
uh, can we have this so we can have more muffled footsteps or whatever?" And I looked into it, and the footsteps, while you could hack something in, the footsteps are actually tied to the model animations itself.
Mm.
So, like the third person animations, I should say. So that model calls the function to play footstep sounds when it's running, but not, and the crouch one does not have that. And so I'd have to re-import models, add footstep sounds.
Mm-hmm.
What a pain.
Absolutely.
Oh, nice. The classic box stacking.
Oh yeah, I've broken the old man Murray rule.
Yes, start to crate. That's right.
Oh god, yeah. No, that's kind of amazing. That it's not like reference more.
Yeah, no, I love to bring that up.
Yeah, no, like it's weird. Like a bunch of my professors in college like clued me into that. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the humor in that is outdated, but
Yes.
Um,
Yes, indeed.
yeah, I think that's clear enough. And it looks somewhat organic, so.
Yeah.
Actually, like, I don't know. I feel like stuff away from the corner is probably going to be like a little more outward.
The one thing about Thief 4 that comes to mind is, I've had a lot of issues with sort of people. And this seems paradoxical because I love immersive sims, and this is what I talk about all the time. But I've had issues with people bringing up like immersion as an objective thing that exists in a game.
Right.
And the reason, like, I have a lot of issues with stuff because you can look at Thief 4 and it has all these like extremely detailed first-person animations for doing everything, for like opening, every drawer and opening windows, and every interaction has a first-person animation. And I know people, and this is like, I know the same thing for like Red Dead Redemption 2 has like all these extremely, tons of work poured into them animations, and I know a lot of people who think these are great, like they absolutely love them. But for me, this is really annoying and really takes me out of the experience. Versus like in Thief, I can just grab an item, or like any immersive, I can just grab an item and it immediately goes in my inventory, and I fill in the abstraction of my character reaching a hand out and picking it up, right?
Mm.
So that's like a thing where I have this preference for almost no animations in some cases as being quote unquote more immersive for me, right? And other people will say, well, no, but obviously it's more immersive if your character does these things, right? So I find that discourse very frustrating, where people will say like, and this is a lot of cases, it's for like, people will say, oh yeah, man, the old Gothic games or whatever, I never played those, but old Gothic games are immersive because, right? And it's fair enough when you want to say, I find this immersive in this way, but people will kind of talk like Thief was immersive because, well, I mean, they were trying to make it immersive in this way, right? But and it succeeds for me, and it succeeds for a lot of people. But I've talked to people with all sorts of crazy different preferences for this stuff, where it almost sounds like people saying they were trying to make Thief fun, and it is fun. Yeah, I mean, I agree, but like not for everybody,
No, completely. Yeah, I'm thinking about the time when in the Prey video I tried to argue about immersion, and I think you had a very big counterpoint in the comments. Yeah.
I don't even remember. Oh, let me go find my old
yeah.
My old screeds.
Well, basically, yeah. Well, basically, I was basically using the argument of immersion in order to, I think, talk about the overabundance of UI in the.
Oh yeah, no, that was I remember that.
Yeah. And that was basically, I think, just sort of the main thing. It's just like I'm just sort of using this as a vector to talk about like I hate all of this stuff cluttering up the screen, and I find it very hard to get into the game because of that. Which is, I think, maybe similarly, I had an issue with Thief 4, because it's like very tough to describe in terms of when you get into Thief and you play it a lot, you start sort of engaging in that spatial thinking, and you're like, okay, well, theoretically, if this loops around to here, then there should be another path that I could take behind this building to get to the same place. And you're sort of thinking of this as like an environment that you're in.
Yeah.
Whereas, not to say that this is, say, quote unquote Brechtian, but with Prey, it was very difficult for me to get that sort of intuition.
Yeah, no, I can totally. In fact, I look at my comment. I think I said. Said I agree with you on the HUD. Actually.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm the person who sent you that mod.
Yes.
So, I think actually, luckily, in the more recent patch after Moon Crash, they added some not as sophisticated options, but they still added some options for removing HUD icons, which is nice.
Oh yeah.
No, I agree though, because like it's weird. It's a weird balance where I don't have any problems with the kind of the HUD stuff in like Deus Ex or System Shock 2, even though like especially in Deus Ex there's lots of HUD elements. But there is sort of and it's a really tough question. I don't really know even how I think about this, but like how much when you're walking around a level do you feel like I am walking around looking for the button the designer wants me to push, right? Versus I'm looking at this as a space with rules that I need to, interact with in like some kind of way that's problem solvy,
No, completely.
And I don't. It's weird to argue. Like, it's hard for me to say why a HUD would influence that tremendously, but I guess part of it is like objective markers. That's one that really I think is detrimental and. Although there's two cases in Prey where if you don't have the objective markers on, you just don't know where the hell to go. Like, which is like most the entire game is great without objective markers, but like there's the deep storage key and you have to scan the coral and you have to like outside of the station at the end. And, like, you have no idea where that is without objective markers. It's so frustrating.
And that's sort of interesting because that gets. I think so many other people have brought this up. Mark Brown included, but it's sort of like, well, that sort of reveals this sort of method in level design of just like, well, we don't really need to have, say, a reasonable excuse as to why the player would have this information, and therefore we don't need to really signal all of this stuff to them through the environment itself. Like, we can just say, like, okay, go to this vector 3,
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's okay. I have two things about this. I thought about this before. So someone made a video about how like Fallout 3 is better than you think, or like one of those kind of hot take videos.
Oh,
because
boy.
There's like the H Bomber guy video about how bad it is.
Yeah.
So someone made a video saying actually Fallout 3 has these great things and it's better for these reasons, right? And one of his arguments is in Fallout 3 there's a bunch of these alternate quest solutions. So actually, there's more role-playing depth than you thought. But the problem is, I've not played Fallout 3, full disclosure. But
I've played it very briefly.
Yeah, it seems like in a lot of cases, these alternate quest solutions are something you'd have to look up on a wiki. It's like, if you and the problem is, it's not because the quests like are so obtuse and you never figure it out. It's that the normal quest solution is given to you with an objective marker, and the other one is not. So you'd have to like go out of your way to not complete the quest to complete it in a different way. So like the player is taught to look at the objective marker, just go follow the arrow, when technically there's this more intricate player driven narrative experience they could get not doing that. But what reason would they have to even know that exists? And as a contrast, like what struck me is in Deus Ex you have that moment. Spoilers for Deus Ex, it's 20 years old, guys. Just play the game. But you have that moment where you're in Hong Kong and you have to talk to Maggie Chow in her apartment.
Yeah.
And there's like all these ways to get up in the apartment. You can climb on the roofs, you can do all this stuff, right? The classic Deus Ex stuff. But the story tells you to go talk to Maggie Chow, and she tells you there's evidence in the police station that exonerates me. Just go check it out, and you'll see, or that exonerates me, and puts the blame on the luminous path. And if you go to the police station, you'll find that the evidence actually is the opposite, and then if you come back, she's gone, and the maid tries to kill you, and then the soldiers come out, and that's how you're shown the path to the Dragon's Tooth, and you can continue the story. So that's the main way you're supposed to, quote unquote, resolve the quest, is by talking to Maggie Chow, going to the police station, going back, getting ambushed. But if you're observant, you can notice several different paths into a secret area in the apartment. So you can see from the level below hers is the construction zone. There's a laser grid there. You can come from the roofs. You can find a secret area. And also, this is my favorite one, you can hear the lasers buzzing behind a secret wall panel. You can hear a laser grid behind a wall panel, and if you look around, you can fob a lantern that opens the door.
Oh my god, that is amazing.
What's so cool about this is because in Deus Ex, you're being taught to look for clues and look for things to progress the story, right? The player will hear a laser grid, and they might actually get suspicious. They might actually be like, I wonder why there's a laser grid. That's odd. Those are usually in high security areas. And they're not oh, well, I'll go follow the objective marker. They're I'm going to investigate this. And then they investigate this, and that's how they progress the story instead of, doing the mandatory thing. So, that's an example, I think, of this, how a HUD element could, remove your kind of agency and your problem-solving, kind of real-world problem-solving that the games are going at, where that's something I was really impressed by when I thought about it. I was like, wait a second, Deus Ex actually does this, and it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely, and that's one of those, not just sort of a John Romero Doom style, well, this is how you make a level, and sort of having this pattern in there, but it also kind of is sort of where the Dishonored world building comes out of, where it's well, there's this consistency of lasers in high security areas. So
yeah, it's if
you have to train the player.
Razor trap somewhere, you'd okay, why is there a razor trap here, right? This is saying something about this area.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, definitely. Yeah, I don't know. That's I don't know. On the one hand, I think that's really cool that that's there. On the other hand, I am the exact type of moron who would never put that together.
Yeah, I think on my first playthrough, I think it was only my third playthrough that I actually went to the police station. I think the first one I did, because I always, my rule in games is to always exhaust the side content before I do the critical path,
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking around, and I found the main path forward. In the second playthrough, I shot her through the skylight.
Because even the fact that you've mentioned oh yeah, there's all these alternate paths to get up into the apartment, I'm I don't remember any of that.
Yeah,
I just remember going back to her apartment and getting shot at. But
yeah, and that's actually this is another thing. You asked how do I come up with ideas for my? Well, one of the things I did more recently is it's a year ago now. I made it so you can shoot through glass. So it'll trace the glass, and if it hits a breakable glass object, maybe also I think just breakable movers in general.
Wow.
It'll do a second trace at a couple pixels or a couple Unreal units after the glass and continue the trace. And the reason for that is I remembered trying to shoot Maggie Chow through the penthouse, and I couldn't. I would shoot the glass, and it would stop the bullet. I was just so frustrated. I want to kill her through the glass. And then the other reason is because that thought was buried in my head for years, because I had done that and I was disappointed. And then I played Duke Nukem 3D, and you can shoot through the glass in Duke Nukem 3D.
Wow.
I don't know how they did that, but
wow.
I was okay, if they can do that in Build Engine, I can do this in Unreal Engine. Let's make it happen. So.
Nice. No, definitely. I think that there are. I'm trying to remember, because I think there are things where it's I had ideas that were sort of born out of frustrations for things. I don't know. For a little while, I was trying to very, very briefly, and of course, it went nowhere. For the Dark mod, I was actually, after I published my first level, I was thinking well, wouldn't it be cool if we had something called a tether arrow or something like that? Because it's with a rope arrow, you're always able, it's good in that it limits where it can be used necessarily.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's always an issue of it goes vertically, and that's the only way
Yep.
that you're able to do it. So it's like,
Hmm.
well, okay, what if you could actually tie off the rope somewhere and then shoot it, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you have like a rope to
Like a zip line. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so I started playing around with this in here, and regrettably, the entity system in ATEC 4, I don't think that in the scripts themselves necessarily you can actually have them like communicate with each other, which is really frustrating and sucks.
Yeah.
Although interestingly, in this engine, I don't know if you know this, but the entity definition files are literally just like files that exist in the project. So it's like you do them in plain text, and just like any other script, they are read in at runtime. So basically, it's defined in Doom 3. All of the enemies are defined at runtime.
That's interesting. Well,
Yeah,
so,
as well as the
that's-
guns, but
Hmm. That's really cool. I mean, that's something that I really enjoyed about New Dark. I think I mentioned is in my article I wrote about it. Is like, obviously the game used to be, in 1998. Of course, it was. You have the script packages. You have the monster. Like the whole reference files system that they have, and then you have the map files, right? So there's pretty traditional engine setup with, the script packages and monsters and everything. But New Dark has all this crazy cool stuff for text file injection, which is more like that Doom idea. Obviously, it's not you're not doing the whole game like that, but you can inject changes to the object hierarchy and changes to the missions with these like DML injections, and you can inject scripts at runtime. So, I mean, the nicest thing for me about this is like in Deus Ex, I have to recompile the whole code base to test a single change, which, knowing my coding errors, takes about 30 minutes for any feature, of like just all the recompiles I'm doing. But in Scissor 2, I can just make a single text file. If I forget a semicolon, add it on, save the file, reload my save. And I don't have to close out the game. It just reloads the save. When I reload the save, it recompiles the scripts.
oh yeah, no,
And it just
same
goes.
here.
So that's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even think that was possible. But
Yeah. No, that kind of stuff is really fun. I have no idea
what
what
is this
I'm.
building becoming?
I
What
don't.
are we,
I don't fucking
what are we
know.
thinking about this?
Well, it's sort of interesting because a big part of the way I want to redo this level is there was that. I am regrettably forgetting the name of it, but there was another dark mod level that we were playing, I think a couple of months ago, that sort of took place in a shipyard. And so people recommended it because, you actually go on a ship and into a ship as part of that mission.
Yep.
And it actually had a very good idea about like this sort of inn that took that was like by the water, and it had this sort of facade that sort of extended out, but it had like a set of stairs that went down and then below and then up, and then that way that this building could like serve as a giant blocker between like this area over here and this area over there.
Sure.
And so I was sort of thinking of this building as like, oh, well, this could just be like a giant inn or something like that, or like a giant tavern and inn.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then I started building this over here thinking like, oh, this could be a tavern, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I already have one.
Yeah, that's an interesting agglomeration.
Yeah, so I'm just like,
businesses
I don't know what to do with it. This could just be like I don't know.
Like a office of like a shipping manager or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the intent of this over here. But trying to think of like something that kind of feels austere. Like I think there's like a shipping or customs house, or like a very small courthouse or something.
Yeah.
But I'm also sort of looking at like, I don't know, I just started playing around, and I wanted to have this sort of elevated floor so that maybe we could have like little windows at the base here peeping out. So I'm trying to figure out like what to do with like a floor that's below ground level. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe like yield courthouse here would be fine, and then there's some like files in the basement that would help the player with an objective. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I can see some kind of clerk's office here. Yeah.
Ah, clerk's office. There you go.
So Keita asks, do you like to draw out your level designs on paper beforehand?
Yeah, that's kind of how I did that before. Regrettably, however, with this, well, it takes a lot of time to do that and then translate stuff. And then, I don't know, I feel like people talk a lot about, not to get like precious, particularly with particular, ideas that you have, and that you need to be able to play around with these sort of layouts and sort of mold them to be more conducive to the player experience. I don't know. I keep getting this idea of like, well, I think it's maybe a good guide, but I also feel like it takes a lot of time for something that we're not necessarily going to be committed to. Which is to say, I still have engaged in a lot of that, I guess. I don't know where I'm going with this. Which is to say, yes, but I feel like I need to start moving away from it, actually.
Sure.
And just sort of embrace the modeling clay sort of approach.
That's one big thing, and this is something that's very true about modders of what I've seen. One of the earliest things I saw about GMDX that kind of drew me to it was there's lots of things I liked about it, but he was also very willing to cut stuff that sucked. Like so often I'll see mods that like it sounds cool on paper, but then people like something about it's not very good, and they're like, well, but I worked on it, so I can't remove it. I mean, what do you mean? It's like I put time into this. I can't remove this, and I obviously I've had that before too. It sucks to. I think the most contested feature in my Deus Ex mod is the addiction system, of like is this a good addiction at all? And like I like it. I think it has problems too, but some people are like this sucks. Just remove this. So I shunted into a playthrough modifier option, hoping no one yells at me. So I don't know. Yeah, it's this challenge of like how do I exactly what you're saying, like keep myself from just holding on to this initial idea I had that maybe sucks.
Much agreed.
So, okay, with this, you have to do a lot of you're dragging polygons into each other, or sorry, polyhedra.
Yeah.
Into each other, and so how bad is the Z fighting?
It depends.
All I know is
I don't know how to give a better answer.
I've ever had with level design, the tiny amount that I've done is trying to fix texture alignment and fix Z fighting.
Oh yeah.
Especially with the beta Unreal Ed that you get with Deus Ex it's just horrendous.
Yeah, no, especially towards the end of the last level I made in here, there was a lot of that where there were entire days where I was just trying to like get a sort of stone texture aligned around a bunch of sort of canal walls, I guess you could say. Actually, yeah, fuck this. I could just make this one. So yeah, there are some tools in here that are kind of helpful for that, but they're not like the best.
Yeah.
Actually, let me, especially once you start getting into patches, which are basically just sort of like terrain meshes that you can like adjust for vertices, and people often use those to create cylinders and to create rounded corners and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's bothersome about it too is like you'll have like these kind of sloped surfaces or these diagonal surfaces that technically there's no way to align a texture. There's no way to make it look correct. Like what do you do? I hope no one cares. Like
Yeah,
Fine.
well, I mean that's part of it, but I also think that you
Yeah.
can obviously like on the corners like create some sort of structure here, like a beam or something that acts as a
Yeah.
physical divider, so you can hide the seam.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which probably would have been the smarter approach for myself,
Uh-huh.
and
We
I
can
didn't
add that
do.
later, right? So, oh.
Yeah. So take for example, let's actually mess around with this for a bit just to show stuff. Patches are also the most likely way to crash the dark gradient editor, so this will be fun. So basically, the idea is that you take this brush here, for example. Now we've got it in the top-down view, so this is going to create a cylinder that is aligned to be, pointing upwards. It's going to be top-down. You go to patch, create simple patch mesh. And then, of course, you have your width and your height, which is basically the number of subdivisions that you have. I'm sure you'll see this in a moment. So let's do something like 7 by 7. So we can actually get some decent detail here. And you remove that, and oh my god. Oh, well. Oh, I thought it was going to make a cylinder. I'm a moron. It's been so long.
It's delayed. I'm curious. This is the anticipation is killing me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a flat thing,
Guy, yeah.
but it is a grid that once you pull up the vertex editor, it's like a 7 by 7 terrain mesh.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sure.
So, yeah. So because of that, you can start moving this around and doing stuff. Obviously, of course, if you stack a bunch of these together and like sort of join them with like actual brush geo, there's going to be problems with aligning them. So let me see if I can.
Yeah, I've seen people mess with this stuff in like Quake and Trench Room.
Oh yeah. God, let me see if I can find the.
It finally got to the part where you're dragging stuff around. So.
Entity inspector, light browser, surface inspector. No. There's some sort of tool where it actually allows you to drag around the UVs on this stuff. Patch inspector? No. Texture tool. Ah, here we go. Yeah. You'll see this in a bit, but... So basically with this like actual layout, you can, if I am understanding this correctly, like click and drag these individual vertices. Merge selection, flip, jeez. How do I could have...
This is the trouble for me with any CAD software. Like, which button do I press?
Yes. Oh god. There are many nonsensical sort of bindings in Dark Gradient that I just do not understand.
It's also why I'm not a big fan of visual programming languages, because it's like I can't just look up the syntax. I have to remember what the icons are. And
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay, yeah, this looks like it snaps. But yeah, you can drag selected vertices around here and actually like stretch the texture.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So stuff like that, and therefore,
That's interesting.
because of this, like you can go over to like select only one, but because of this, you can also go over to this and like actually change the sort of UVs that are actually involved in or the actual like bits of the texture that are actually mapped onto this, and you can have it expand or loop or do whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, you get some pretty sophisticated curves there.
So yeah, so just briefly to talk about like texture alignment stuff later on. That tool is not necessarily the most helpful because it's still like a lot of like manual tweaking, and you could
listen,
just
it's
like
better than Unreal Edge, where you just click on the texture and you have to use arrow keys and go up.
Mm.
Left and right.
Oh God, I remember when I was first messing around with Drawmed, I tried to like create like a little rotated sort of duct or something for the player to walk on to get up a ledge. And I remember rotating the brush, and the texture on it didn't rotate with it.
Oh no. Oh god.
I think that came later. I think that's in there now.
Okay. Thanks.
How do you feel about ladders versus slopes versus lifts as a way to give verticality to levels? Ladders in retro games are usually death trap. Yes.
Fuck ladders.
Yes. Thank you.
No, I have a ladder tier list for old games. Okay, so I've thought about this.
I need you to post this on Twitter.
Half-Life 1 has the best ladders of old 90s games.
Oh.
They're not amazing. They're not amazing, okay, but they work the best. You stick to them, you're glued to them, like you can't fall off. It's pretty safe. Obviously, getting on and off the ladder is a little bit weird. And the last thing that helps it, okay, is the most important thing about ladders is that the game has air control, because Quake has air control. This is vitally important, okay? The next least worst ladders, least bad ladders, I think Deus Ex ladders are fine. They're okay. They're still, you can fall off them too easily, because if you go left or right, you'll just fall off. And you can't jump from them in vanilla. You can now in GMDX, thank God. But the reason they're okay is because negotiating the ladder on the top and bottom is okay. It's serviceable. Like, you can kind of maneuver as long as you kind of take it slow. And if you fall off, you can air control back on as long as this fall is not too long. So it's like, you won't kill yourself. The next worst is Thief. Come on, Thief ladders are terrible. Let's be honest.
No, agreed.
They're really bad. I mentioned I played Thief with like very little saves. I died at the end of Down in the Bone Horde, right after Garrett said, "Good thing I'm not afraid of heights." Speak for yourself, man. I'm afraid of heights in this game. So yeah, the ladders killed me in that game. And the problem is in the Dark Engine, there's no air control. So like if you fall off, you're dead. You can never grab back on. You're just dead. And it's very unclear to me to this day how much momentum you get from jumping off a ladder. Like it just doesn't. It never seems to be the same. Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's a lot. It's very confusing. And just like getting on and off ladders is just such a hassle in Thief. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. You can press Control to drop off, which is nice, but other than that, ladders in Thief are terrible. But there is one ladder that is worse than Thief from this era, and it is Shadow Warrior. Those are the worst ladders anyone has ever made in a video game, because you zoom up them so fast, and there's fall damage. So if you want to go down a ladder, you have to run and hit the ladder, and then as soon as you hit the ladder, you need to press back. So you can't like just grab onto the ladder, because if you do, you'll shoot back up the ladder and you won't go down. You can't drop down because there's fall damage, so you have to like grab on the ladder, and the instant you touch it, press back on your keyboard to start moving down the ladder instead of up.
That is
just, it's so bad. It's so bad. System Shock ladders are probably System Shock 1 ladders I think are better than Thief because there's no fall damage. They're bad, but they don't kill you, so who cares?
Oh yeah. Is there really no fall
damage?
damage?
My ladder tier list. One thing that's shocking to me is that Stalker. It's much later, but Stalker actually has decent ladders. I was completely shocked by this because I assumed this is some kind of clunky, game made in Ukraine, underfunded. These ladders are going to be terrible. No, they work fine. So that's an example of okay ladders.
Yeah.
But no, I think Arcane makes this point fairly well. Like, not only are you going to die to them, I think there's two reasons I say I don't like that. Raph says he doesn't like ladders. One is you'll die, you'll just fall your death anyway. Number two is usually if you have a ladder, you have to have a ladder mode, so you can no longer have your gun out. That's not always the case in Thief and Deus Ex. You can still have your gun out, but you're still restricted, right? And that can be fine in certain games, but like in a game like an immersive sim, it's kind of you're really limiting the player's interactivity in ladder mode, which kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think just like other ways of getting up and down are more interesting than just even a lift is more interesting because like there's physics to it. You can crush robots with them or whatever.
Oh yeah. At least you can in Shock too. um, yeah, that's interesting. No, Justin, who was the level designer on Underworld Descendant, was very vocal in making sure that we didn't have ladders or anything like that, because he has quite a vengeance against them.
Yes.
But for a lot of the same reasons that Raphael outlined in that video. I mean, he also argues that it's more of a player passivity thing, where it's like he would sort of argue that an elevator is not much better, or a lift is not much better, because it is engaging in, well, all you're doing really when the player's on the elevator is you're just standing there waiting for the elevator to go somewhere. Whereas with being on a ladder, all you can do is go up or go down.
Yep.
And it's a binary choice, and it's not terribly interesting. Whereas if you have something like, say, swinging from a rope, well, then you have the ability to climb up and climb down, but you also have the ability to swing and try to steer yourself in 360 degrees in order to jump to a particular place, and all that.
So I will say though, it technically does not have ladders, but how different are Dishonored's chains really from ladders? Come on. They're ladders, right? You can't swing. They're ladders.
Yeah.
I mean, they are 360-degree ladders, so at least you can kind of angle yourself how you want. And they work pretty well, I will say. You don't fall to your death on those.
Yeah. No, completely. The only advantage I can think to ladders in general is that, it's very easy to get AI to actually use them and understand them in an intelligible way. Because, imagine programming an AI trying to fucking swing from a rope tactically.
Or even
Jesus.
an elevator. Yeah, I can definitely see that as a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even seen games where they have trouble negotiating ramps, so it's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. God.
I think in games where you're supposed to be sort of restricted, it can be okay. I think the Dark Souls games do a pretty good job with verticality with ladders. Enemies will climb up ladders to chase you, and you're kind of deliberately restricted in that way. And there's not much expressive movement in these games anyway. It's about trying to figure out how to navigate the area. So a ladder in that context is kind of more fair game, I think. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say also, very interestingly, when we first put out a trailer for Underworld Descendant, or I forget what trailer it was anyway. I think it was the one in June where we actually had the final release date.
Sure.
People noted that we were swinging around in, oh god, what was that area? I just noticed Swamp 2 because that was the level code name. But yeah, someone was in the trailer was swinging on a rope, and then they had their I think their bow and arrow or their sword out, and they're revving up for an attack to land and hit a skeleton as they were going towards the ground. And of course people were like, why are your arms out and you're swinging on a rope? Exactly. Yeah. So similar to the idea of in Thief and Deus Ex being able to attack while on ladders.
Yeah. Maybe this is the secret reason why in System Shock 2 none of the weapons have a left hand, because they want to make sure that when you're on the ladder, kind of, how does that work?
Oh, that's a very good point.
It's totally the reason why.
Yeah.
There actually, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are some mods, because there's weapon model enhancements people have made, and more recently there's been a mod that lets you actually add left hands to System Shock 2. So
interesting.
Assault rifle and grenade launcher, fusion
That
cannon.
that is quite bizarre.
Yeah.
Just use a geo shader to like mirror your right hand.
No, I think it's you know, if, honestly, I don't know, but if I had to guess, it's probably like taken from Counter-Strike or something. That's usually where these things come from.
Yeah.
Of course, it sparked arguments in the forum about whether two-handed pistoling is cooler or one-handed pistoling, and people were posting movie screenshots. Clearly, The Matrix is cooler. You know, like.
Yeah. Yes, and speaking of rope and vine arrows, for Kida's question. Yeah. No, I'm just really surprised that, you know, I don't know. The rope arrow is just such a cool idea, and the fact that even in like Thief they like, you know, nerfed it to such a degree.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I really like about the arrows in Thief is that, like, I don't know if this is intentional, but this is much more clear when you get to the Mage Towers in Thief Gold, which is the expanded reality. But there's like an arrow type for each element. Like that's kind of weird. That's kind of cool. Like you have like the fire, water, and the gas arrows, the arrow one, and then moth.
Oh,
so, like,
I see.
And even if you like the arrow heads, they don't like. It's not like the water arrow doesn't look like a arrow with a water thing on it. It looks like an arrow with a water element crystal or something. And you find the crystals, not so much the arrows, right? When you like find them in the environment. So I don't know why I think that's so cool, but like it's this is like weird setting thing to Thief where this could be it's a tool set with it, you're a thief with an arrow. But like no, you're a thief with elemental arrows.
Oh yeah.
I kind of like that. Rope arrows are more traditional, of course. Although you get the moss arrows in Thief 2, which are just for greats, I guess. In addition to.
Oh wait, were there not? I forgot. I thought there were moss arrows in Thief. In Thief 1.
No, there are moss arrows in Thief 1. I'm saying the vine arrows, which are like...
Oh, the vine arrows.
Yeah, you got from Victoria later.
Yeah. I never learned... Pardon me. I never learned that you could use them for like metal grates and things like that.
Well, I think they
I'm not...
tell you? I don't remember.
I don't remember hearing that at all. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
when someone pointed that out, I felt like a giant moron, but you know.
You've probably seen that Thief versus AAA gaming video. Now, I don't
yes.
I don't stand by everything in that video, but I think it's really good overall. And one of my favorite points in that video is that, like, technically, the rope arrows in Thief 4 are no different than they are in the old Thief games, because technically in the old Thief games, they also only work on wood surfaces, which are the ones that the developers put there, right? So like in both cases, this is the designer says you can rope arrow here, but in Thief 1, it's done in a way, like we were talking before, like these HUD elements and stuff, like, well, there are going to be wood surfaces, and you can use rope arrows on them, right? And now you're looking around the environment, it's like that recontextualizes the environment around you as more interactable. So, like, you think about, in Thief, you're already looking at your environment in terms of how much sound do things make and how visible are things, right? This adds another dimension of, well, wood has this property of I can put rope arrows on it. Versus in Thief 4, even though it's technically the same idea of what are the allowable surfaces, they're really restricted, and so it just becomes a thing of look for the surface that the developer said you could do, rather than looking at your environment as like a place with rules, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Dual-wielded blackjacks in Thief 5.
Be careful what you wish for.
I also liked how the elemental arrows made sense in universe, like how you find water crystals in water, fire arrows to start fires, moss arrows and planners, etc. Dishonored did that a bit as well, where you'd find sleep darts around beds of people of nefarious intent. I don't remember that one, but that's... So you mean, like, would it be...
Like people are...
drug thing, or...
Yeah, like people are self-medicating, maybe.
That's kind of neat. No, yeah, I guess with Thief, I always kind of like thought of it, especially in Thief 1, where it has more of the mystical element of like, this is this element congealing into a substance, you know, and that's where you get the arrow. So like, because otherwise there's no real reason why you'd find water arrows, other than like some mystical force that makes this happen.
Yeah. No, I guess you're. Yeah, the way you put that makes sense because I think I had that same impression. Or just like these things are somehow coming out of nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's nice because like sometimes even in Deus Ex I have to kind of question like why are there crates with ammo in them in civilian hubs? You know, like
Yeah.
who is moving these crates around? I think the crate is okay because it's interaction where you see this as there could be a crate here, as you know, I mean start to crate is off the charts now, but there could be a crate here, and then the crate contains ammo, and that's kind of disconnected from like would there be ammo in this place? No, but there would be a crate and there would be ammo in the crate, you know, there's like that layer between it. While if you just put a 10mm clip on the ground, you'd like, okay, why does this guy have this?
Mm-hmm.
It's cool that Thief kind of does a bit more to contextualize why you have all these items that you can pick up. To be fair, 90% of the vertical shortcuts in the sabotage mission in Thief 2 were a matter of finding the one grate in the ceiling you could shoot vine arrows onto. Which one's sabotage? Oh, Soulforge. Oh yeah, dude, I don't like Soulforge, so don't even get me started on that.
Mm-hmm.
Not a fan.
Oh, I forgot. Someone asked me my opinion on Soulforge on stream recently. Like I said, I think it was sort of it's very interesting to have played that, and I think I played Deus Ex pretty soon after that because it was like I played that submarine mission in Deus Ex, and it was like sort of the same idea. With Soulforge, it's like, you know, in the second half of it, after you get to a place where it's like, okay, there's 7 antennae around the area, and you have to activate 5 of them.
Well, actually, it scales the difficulty, I think. I think it's like...
Oh, yeah.
I think it's all 7 if you're an expert.
Yeah, in all likelihood. So yeah, it was really interesting to see that, and then in Deus Ex, at least, for my difficulty, it was like 5 weld points on, you know, a particular submarine.
Yeah, Deus Ex is all the same for difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, everyone's gonna know I suck at Thief now.
Well, listen, I am a strong advocate for playing normal in Thief 1 and
oh really
normal or hard in Thief 2. So I'm the one guy who will vehemently argue that expert is not the way to play if you're starting the game out. So, because if you look at the difficulties, they're very clearly like trying to add objectives for like replay value to make it like, oh, now you know the mission, you can go back and add this extra layer of challenge and exploration stuff. But like if you go to, especially Thief 1, this is very clear because like they'll add find the scepter of whatever, you know. It's like it has nothing to do with your objective. It's just
yeah, the scepter of whatever
thing,
yeah,
you know? Sorry. And sometimes those are like, to find those you have to like extinguish a fire in a fireplace in some random place and flip a switch, you know. It's like,
yeah,
if you're playing the level for the first time and you don't know where anything is, this is like too overwhelming and it's too much to deal with. So
what in the world did I think I pre-punched out this hole for the window, but that didn't help.
Yeah, I like the beginning of Soulforge. I like the first part of that mission you're talking about, but the signal towers part, I just
yeah, where it's like you're actually just
so frustrated.
You're just getting to know the area. I think the big thing about Soulforge is that it's just like 90% hallway.
It's hallway, and then it's a bunch of like these. It's all robots, right? It's all Karis's annoying. I am the child of Karis, you know. And that's, I'm not complaining about that. That's funny. But these guys are, there's like almost no counterplay unless you stealth them perfectly. So like if you mess up and they find you and they're starting to shoot they shoot cannonballs at you. You can try to run away, right? But then there might be some more in the other room you left, and it's like with guards you can outrun them, you can use stun bombs, you can do all this crazy stuff. when the whole level is robots, you just have to have enough water arrows, and you don't. So you just have to sneak by them, which means you have to quick save because you will probably get spotted the first time. It was so frustrating to me. So, versus like in Thief 1, some people don't like the Maw of Chaos, but like that's just like a straight romp. You just like, it's just like a roller coaster, and then it's done. It's very linear, but it's just like, hey, here's this environmental climbing thing, here's some stealth. It's a weird. It's just like a kind of like weird environment, and it's supposed to be kind of it's supposed to be pretty light. I think it's not supposed to be like this heavy final mission. It's supposed to be kind of sprint through it and get to the finish line. So, and I thought that was more enjoyable personally.
No, definitely. Something that I really admire as well is just the sort of embrace in Thief of like deliberately taking advantage of unrealistic things that you can do with the level editor, because I don't know, I think people really don't like the mage towers, but there's just like one particular detail that I love in them, which is that they keep talking about the water tower having been flooded because of some moron, which is really funny. But the thing is that once you get into the water tower, it's like, oh, well, there's like the water is like dripping into this place from like down the stairs, and you're like, okay, well, this makes sense, and you walk up the stairs, and then you open the door to the main chamber, and it's literally just a wall of water that's just sort of holding there, and you're like, oh, because it came from a spell and it's magic, and it's like
it's kind of neat. I like some of the towers in the mage towers. I do not like the overall mission, but I do like the puzzle sections, there's
kind
of bothers me.
I mean, it's tough because I think there are some like parts in the Earth Mage Tower where you can just literally get stuck if you don't do it properly, which is not fun. But
it's the fact that like you have to backtrack so much to the same areas, because like you can't use the shortcuts, like the tunnels don't work, like, because you have to go all the way back to the bottom anyway, so it's like there's no point to the central tower connections. And then
really,
I overall like the towers, but there's one problem in that like 2 or 3 of them have the same layout where you walk out into open space and there's like guards patrolling, and in all 3 of these like copy pasted rooms, you have to first mantle up onto a landing because the staircases aren't dimensioned correctly, which is weird. You can't just walk up it, and you're also like the landing is super well lit, so you have no visibility walking up onto it, but every guard can see you because it's a big open area. So I'm like, I hate all 3 of these rooms.
No, I remember especially...
just a bunch of tiny complaints. I'm like, I hate this part, but this is a cool mission. I don't know.
Oh, yes, the fire tower. I was about to mention because...
fire tower.
Because the top of it, it's like there are a bunch of fire mages just walking around in these like lava pools, and of course the lava pools generate light, and all of the surfaces are literally just like metal grating. So you just have to fucking run past these areas, and it's just not fun.
I think I just saved gas arrows and just
that's not a bad idea.
Because I think you get gas. Isn't fire tower the last one? I believe, and you can get gas
so.
arrows in the air tower. So I definitely like the idea that like the water temple, the water tower being like busted in that way is it's definitely like this weird outlandish, like, oh, what the hell's going on here thing. I like that for sure.
Similar, I mean, obviously that also plays in with the Constantine's Manor, as well as Into the Maw. I don't know, and I guess that's sort of like missing from
you also the one mission
Thief 2
like that is the Trail of Blood, right? Where you going back from the pagan zone.
Oh, yeah.
And it has like those season areas, like the winter, fall thing. So like it's like these condensed.
Oh my god, I forgot about
level,
those.
Each part of it was the season, I think. Yeah.
There are like tons of areas in that level that I just completely forgot about.
That reminds me. There's obviously people making texture packs for Thief and all those, right? And one that really bothered me that I saw was they made physical grass for that level, and you're supposed to follow the trail of blood. I'm red-green color deficient. They're putting like this like dark green grass and dark red blood splotches and like 3D I can't see the blood anymore. I never use this, but like I looked at like there's this trailer for the mod. I'm like, this is worse. I can't see this anymore. My gameplay, man.
Interesting.
So, I'm being shunted out of this equation here. This is a good amount of work to get these windows, huh?
Yeah, I guess. Well, I decided that I wanted to have these things like sticking out. Oh God, how did this happen? Yeah. No, I think that's good. Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's like enough space for like a second floor here.
So I assume the dark mod is more focused on. We're talking about all these weird supernatural elements with Thief. I assume it's more based on like the Thief 2 stealth stuff, though. I'm assuming Burks and.
Yeah. There's not. I think there's some like fantastical stuff in here, but I actually rarely see it used. I mean, I haven't necessarily played like a ton of dark mod maps, but as far as I can tell, people just sort of like to stick to the general, like, okay, you know, we're robbing a mansion, sort of thing. Yeah, I think there's like a flame elemental or something in here, but as far as I can tell. Well, because I also think that sort of invites a lot of questions into terms of like, okay, well, if we're taking the flame elemental example, what exactly, you know, does that have interactions with like, you know, flammable objects in the environment and doing all this and that, and, you know, again, trying to get the stim and response stuff set up so that there's like some consistency with it.
Aren't those basically just glorified fire arrow generators? I think they were added in Thief Gold to make sure you had fire arrows in the feature.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, I think they weren't there originally.
Yeah, let's look this up.
I think they fit. They're kind of creepy. So.
There's now like NPC. Oh, AI. There we go. Monsters. Yeah, elementals.
Huh.
Oh, this is just like a floating orb.
Oh, okay. Oh, I guess, yeah, sorry. There's the firemen, and there's also those, they do have like elemental orb things in Thief as well. I always forget about them.
Monster werebeasts and werebeast crawler, but apparently they do not have
there's spiders
models. Yep, spiders, some undead, spirits and zombies. There you go. But yeah, again, I don't really see a lot of like spooky or haunted missions in.
Yeah, I think I'm one of those. You know, most people are not like me, and most people vastly prefer the stealth-focused missions.
Yeah.
So, but I really enjoy the spooky, haunted mansions and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good idea. I was sort of theorizing. Zach was on stream and he thought it was a really cool idea. So he likes me, so how dare you? But I was sort of theorizing of like, oh, wouldn't it be, because I was messing around with like a lot of, you know, the glass on this building right over here. I was thinking like, oh, it's like I think Zach said it was like some Kingdom Hearts looking ass glass. And so I was thinking like, oh, wouldn't that be cool if you had sort of a surreal thief or dark mod mission where it's like almost all the walkable surface is like glass and you're sort of like walking around in this void with a bunch of like weird you know, colored lights sort of shining.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
If that would work in the engine, it would look good.
Yeah. The levels in the Dark Mod have new audio dialogue, or do they only reuse sound assets from the base games? No, they have new stuff, and like people volunteer to record this stuff, which is very admirable. Blood. The mission was designed by Terry Brocious of Shodan and Victoria fame. Wow. Oh, the Mage Towers? Really? I didn't think so.
I think she's talking. I think he's talking about Trail of Blood.
Oh, Trail of Blood.
No.
Yeah. There was like a shipping party for UA that apparently the Brociouses turned up for, and I didn't bother going.
Hey, are you gonna put like a basement window there?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, just playing around with more stuff, because also this is just sort of getting used to like, okay, well I have to think of like how to make these sort of environments look natural, and clearly I need practice with that. So hey, like a split level like this kind of makes sense to mess around with.
Mezzanine. Maybe that's not the right word here.
I don't think so.
I think for a mezzanine, do you need like 2 levels? So you know, like 2 different levels at the same time, not including the ground floor.
I don't know.
Does Dark Mod have the same like sound propagation stuff as Dark did?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think so necessarily. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of the Portal stuff does a lot of that work. Maybe not to the same degree.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the cooler features in Thief is you can, if you lean up against doors, you can actually hear through them better, as if you're like.
Oh really?
Door. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought that was something that like Gloomwood invented from whole cloth.
No.
Wow.
No, that's in Thief. Someone, I mean, I didn't find it on myself. Someone told me that. Someone told me about it halfway through my playthrough, and I abused the hell out of that.
Oh yeah, I would imagine.
So.
Unlit. Yeah, let's apply this so we can. Line top and a line left, I suppose. Well, that doesn't quite work, but...
One thing I remember, I think this is in Life of the Party, I noticed this specifically. In Thief 2, they do a lot of this thing with the windows, where this is like obvious stuff, I think, but the outside of the window will be like a lit texture, and the inside will be an unlit texture.
Oh, yeah.
To simulate which side you're on. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing that here as well, because I was thinking of... Oh, hey, that's actually really good. It's a handy thing to notice. I was trying to press the fit button, and obviously I was trying to scrunch the whole texture into that one surface, but apparently you can tell it to do it by half or do it by a quarter and actually give it a decimal. That's nice. Yeah, so I was thinking about doing that because of, these 2 lights over here. And it would actually, I think, just make a lot more sense to have like a lit window and some sort of like light source inside. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, those light sources. Sorry.
Yeah. So whereabouts are you, by the way? Because I don't know why I thought this for a while, and I'm embarrassed to say this. I thought you were in Brazil.
No.
Nope. Clearly not.
A friend of mine's from Argentina.
Oh, okay.
That's the closest I get. Like a one of the guys who maybe has been on the stream before.
I've watched Brazil.
No, I am solidly Midwest American, so.
Oh yeah, Midwestern. Okay.
Most boring kind of person.
Nah, I get you. Well, I don't know. I'm from New Hampshire. New Hampshire's pretty boring, is what I'm saying.
Jeez, my throat here. Is the height of the basement like? Are you supposed to crouch down there, or is it like a? I can't really tell how high it is.
It's supposed to be like a sort of low ceiling area. You should still be able to stand there. I believe I measured it out to be high enough. Let me. Yeah, this is 104,
Okay.
which is actually still pretty tall because I think the player is 72.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't get a sense of scale with the. I assume once you had other objects.
Yeah. Anywhere is better than Florida. I don't know.
I mean, I despise humidity, so I.
Yeah, so that's like the player height here. So this is actually pretty tall still.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, let's bring that up to. Yeah. 2 units. Something I also learned, and I'm going to have to fix before I distribute this again, is that with my last map, blocking things out with wood is a very quick recipe for people to abuse rope arrows.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's no like gray box texture here. There's no Jorge.
Yeah, I was watching. You know Skaki, right? He's thief mapper and stuff.
Oh, Skaki, yeah.
Yeah. I was watching his. He was doing an Iron Man playthrough of Thief 1 and 2, which is for him. He means like no saves permission, but he can fail the mission and keep going. You can retry it. I would never want to do like full permanent. That sounds horrible. But
yeah,
I kept noticing him using like rope arrows creatively, not just on ceilings but also walls, which I like almost never did my whole playthrough. But it's totally a thing you can do. So there's lots of little things like that in Thief where, like, I mean, for example, I didn't know you could kill haunts at all with your sword.
Oh, really?
Because your blackjack doesn't work, which I should have recognized. This is like a D&D thing. Undead are resistant to blunt damage, of course. I should have known this, right? But I assumed this meant they were unkillable and were invincible. So I spent my entire time, and my also no saves run, like Return to Cathedral, sitting in corners terrified of these haunts walking, because I couldn't do anything.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm sure. Yeah, a lot of people don't know you can, whack tapestries.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, and I remember that being a huge problem when playing through the Thieves Guild. Because that actually...
Yep. How you creatively use a rope arrow to wall. I just mean, like, I only use rope arrows on ceilings or, like, posts. I never thought to shoot at the wall and then climb, like, along the wall with a rope arrow, pretty much. It just never occurred to me, like, as an option, so... But if you notice that there's actually a lot of ways to get places that you might not think are accessible with rope arrows.
Wee. All right. Man, time actually flew. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 hours.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like usually takes forever. or I don't know, it feels like forever when
Sure.
I first start out during these things, and then once you kind of get into it, it's actually pretty okay. Someone from Massachusetts is calling me. No, thank you. That's not an indictment of Massachusetts, by the way. I'm just saying, like.
Yeah, I would never talk to someone from Massachusetts.
Well, I mean, I just spent 2 years there, so I don't know.
And I never talked to you. No.
God damn. That was good.
Thank God I have you back after all, you know. Ah. Yeah, I've been thinking if I ever want to do level design, I'd probably start with like or something, because you don't have to worry about all this stuff about, like in Thief you have to worry about lighting, not just for aesthetics and like guiding you around, but also it's like relevant to gameplay, and worry about sound propagation, and oh man, it just sounds, it seems like really daunting, and also worrying about like having a realistic space that means something, that
Yeah.
has context, versus like I will just make a maze with monsters.
Yeah.
I think if I ever did that, I'd start. But
Monsters and mazes, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to it. Speaking of the 3DO, there was this game called.
Keep fighting.
Yeah, I know, I'm fixing it. There was a game I had as a little kid, which I only recently found out was like also on the 3DO. I just had the PC port. It was called Icebreaker, and it had a very simple. Oh Jesus! Oh no, wait, no, I see. It had a very simple sort of map creator, and all it was just sort of placing down pyramids on a tile. Sort of layout, and then you would just set like the number of types of enemies to spawn. It was very simple, and that was like the first time I'd ever done stuff like that. But I also think that like weirdly, like Little Big Planet was also kind of a huge thing for me getting into level editing.
Yep.
So yeah.
I did Super Smash Bros. Brawl. That's the only level.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we made these awful like it would be like a tiny platform, or like a bunch of crumbling platforms below with spikes below, and like tiny chutes that you could be ejected out of to die, but otherwise it was just like constantly being bounced around. Oh God. I guess my part of my reluctance is like I really have disliked using CAD programs, so I used like SolidWorks and other 3D modeling software for like component design. I've hated the interfaces, and then the little bit I've dabbled in Unreal, it is the most fun thing in the world personally. Just because of how old and I mean it's so buggy, it crashes all the time. And the other thing I really don't like about the Unreal Engine is, Unreal, I should say, is this is like a really specific complaint, but the way you move through the levels is by dragging your mouse. If you want to move forward, you drag your mouse forward. And when I was going through by hand and editing all the requirements for every single computer in Deus Ex, and I swear at the end of it, I almost got like carpal tunnel from just going up and up and up and up and trying to like scroll through these levels. It's terrible. So
no, I could imagine. Jesus.
Yeah. Oh my God. So I do not recommend that. I think I don't know how you move around in this, if it's just like WASD or...
Yeah, weirdly it is, the WASD doesn't work. You need to actually use the arrow keys. Which is bizarre to me, but...
Yeah, Dromed has the System Shock 1 control.
Yes, it does! Oh my God.
Yeah. RF and V for looking up and down.
Yeah.
Although at least you can right click and like quick snap the camera somewhere else in the grid. That's pretty convenient.
Hmm.
Kita asks if you have any tips on how to break into the programming/gaming industry.
Well, I would say that in terms of bang for your buck, Natty Ice is the cheapest beer with the highest ABV. So,
Oh my god.
yeah, in terms of the way the industry exists as it is, you're gonna want to specialize. Understanding not just like being a game designer is what you want to do, but also understanding like if you want to be a level designer or if you want to be, you know, a systems designer, or if you want to do like UI UX, or even if you want to do like a very specific art task, let's say. Not just understanding like you need to pursue that stuff specifically, but also in terms of like where you want to end up, like if you want to end up at like Arcane, for instance, understanding, you know, the sorts of styles that they tend to do. Like with Dishonored, it's obviously very painterly and like, you know, expressionism. So, you know, making a bunch of styles for that, if you're an artist and like trying to copy their style in your own projects, is like a really good way to sort of get their attention and to communicate to them like you're a good fit. Or, you know, for like me making, you know, levels for like Thief stuff, like obviously that'd be way more interesting to them if I started making levels in like I think Modern Warfare 2 as like
Yeah.
a level editor. So understanding that, to not just specialize in discipline but also specialize in genre, because it's getting hyper focused at this point.
Fun fact: the guy who made the System Shock 2 Rebirth models, like it's a bunch of character models. I don't actually like them that much, but
Yeah.
it's like a character model upgrade for enemies and stuff.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
now
yeah.
the lead animator
For Arcane?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's interesting, because I remember
did Dark Messiah and Dishonored, and I don't know, probably Dishonored 2 and not Prey.
Wow.
So
That's something. That's also weird, because I remember the midwives being like really sexied up and being very perturbed by that.
They have been made a bit more closer to the originals over time by the community. I
Thank
personally
God.
just think those. I think, yeah, like it was made like what, like 12 years ago now. So it's, you know, it was like an amateur, you know, indie project thing. I'm not trying to be too harsh on it, but I have some definitely problems. I tend to not recommend it because like the cyborg assassins are like robots. They're not like they're no longer this iconic System Shock 1 like ninja guys. They're just like robots. You know, it's like this is not it's wrong. It's incorrect. So.
How dare you?
Yeah. I don't know, I usually think people should probably play with like the original assets. And that's, like maybe it's like an AI texture upscale or something could be okay, but I think you should probably see the original artistic vision first.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that was a thing that my professor gave me as a really good piece of advice. Although, like, the portfolio class I took is where I got that sort of specialized in genre sort of thing. But my professor was also just like, you know, where do you want to work? And then try and, like, play their games, and if they have a level editor, try to, like, ape their style, basically, and figure out why they do what they do. Which is, of course, just good general advice for, you know, becoming a designer, but also, like, you know, if you want to sort of ingratiate yourself, that's not a bad approach.
Is there anything about game development that you're surprised that you actually like doing?
No, it all sucks. No, I'm kidding. Honestly, the fact that I sort of fell into level design in particular was sort of an accident. And I really found out that I enjoyed it. Because I was telling you,
found out in college, or was it?
Yeah, because it was sort of like so many people go into like college degrees for game design, and it's like so many people have like very misguided opinions as to what design is, and I was one of them. And then the rubber started hitting the road with a course called like Principles of Game Design, which is basically teaching us out of the Jesse Schell The Art of Design, a book of lenses book, which is a pretty decent book. It's just, very scattershot and hard to sort of wrap your head around. And things still felt very vague, and it felt like there wasn't like some sort of coherent framework for a lot of this design ethos that Shell was espousing. And so I was thinking to myself, like, what in the hell is this? And like, it was such a difficult semester. Like, half of my classmates dropped out during that semester because that's the big pruning.
Yeah.
And then the next semester after, I go through all this haranguing. Like, I did, like, I think advanced programming and intro to 3D art, as well as 2 general ed classes that semester. And that was just, like, way too much. And the next semester, I entered level design 1. And I was just like, okay, what the fuck am I doing here? Do I still really want to do this? And then incidentally, we started playing around, with blocks, but also like hammer. And I was like, oh, this is where all of that actually comes into play. And so I think the fact that I'm doing level design was a thing I found out accidentally in a way.
Oh, okay.
So I'm very happy that
Sure.
that didn't go to waste, and that I actually get to do this for a living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say for myself, I was completely shocked when I found that I liked doing UI programming.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, it is kind of the worst thing ever, but I don't know, it's actually kind of fun once you get everything working.
Yeah, some of that's really neat. For a systems design class, I actually was a little nerd, and I did a prototype of something in Doom 3 because I wanted to do something with like diegetic interactive UI.
Sure.
And so there was actually a little there's a little tool that the Quake 4 team made that you can still kind of access, but you have to get to it in a hacky way. And then I don't know, it was really fun to mess around with that. I could send that to you in a bit if you want, because it's
Sure.
yeah, it's weird because it's like the stuff for actually making the interactive screens in like Doom 3 is, as it turns out, a separate scripting language from like everything else, which is so bizarre, but it's also like really still fun to mess around with.
Yeah.
So I can get where you're coming from.
Yeah, Deus Ex actually has a entirely different scripting language for the conversation system.
Oh wow.
So that's, otherwise it's like Unreal Engine with some extensions, but that one is like the engine for all the logic flags and stuff that remembers your consequence. It hooks into the main engine, of course, but it's all its own interface, and it's scary. It's very scary stuff.
All right. Well, I think we're just about done with the staircase here, and we are at 3. So, well, at 3 my time. I don't know what your time
Yeah,
is.
I'm an hour later.
Central. Yeah.
Yes, God's time zone.
Alright. What in the world do we do with the rest of this? I don't know. How am I going to make this into a good stealth environment? I don't know. How does this play into the level as a whole? Did I dump into too much time into a building that's not going to matter? I don't know. But
well, you know, life is full of surprises.
Sure is.
And unknowns.
All right. And with that, I think we're done here. I want to thank you again for very short notice hopping on the stream
Yeah, no, it
here.
was fun.
Hell yeah, no, really enjoyed it, and I'm glad we got along so well for the first time hearing your voice.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to suppress my, you know, my antisocial tendencies, you know, for about 2 hours, you know.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I'll give yourself credit. It was 3.
Oh, well, it says 2 hours ago, but we'll see. It was probably just about 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Any last words for the audience?
Check out RoSoDudeMods.wordpress.com.
Oh, hey, that's a good point. I should have asked you to plug stuff, but you did it. So
I'll do it myself. Self-shilling.
I'll have to.
Mods for stuff you may have seen on this channel.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I don't think I'll be here next week because I'm actually going camping with my girlfriend. But yeah. Hopefully the week after that I'll be back. All right. See ya.